62, 1,731 new cases in the country. Yesterday, 80 new cases and 3 new deaths were recorded in the country. The day before that, we were looking at 223 new cases and 2 new deaths. Interesting to note that even with the opening of schools, we have not heard any reports so far. Nothing has been at least sent out that anyone in schools has reported with symptoms or tested positive for COVID-19. No teachers, no students, nothing yet. So I think so far, so good. And so still one to watch in terms of what could happen. Again, like you said, still waiting on the vaccine. It's going to come in February. And 12 million people should be vaccinated with this as we wait for the remaining vaccines that would come into the country. So this is what we're looking at now. Everybody's still being encouraged to wear their masks, wash hands, use your sanitizers where you can, and maintain social distance. But again, that seems to have been thrown out the window, what with public transport and going back to schools, etc. So this is what it is. This is where we are.
Okay, so time for us to take a break at 6:15. Let's see whether it's going to be a cold or hot day today in Kenya. And let's say hello to everybody who's online. Good morning to you. Spice FM KE on YouTube, on Facebook and Twitter. We are live streaming on www.spicefm.co.ke. In addition to our frequencies around the country, Nairobi is 94.4. It's 87.9 in Mombasa. Kisumu is 102.5. 96.0 in Nakuru. 96.7 in Eldoret. 90.9 in Nyeri. And 97.7 in Malindi. Good morning.
Spice FM.
It's getting hot in here.
Oh, everybody steals. It's better a thief who brings something small back. And I say to myself, there's no better thief. A thief is a thief, period.
All those bribes, how much they're getting per year, how much inconvenience they're causing, as much as you call it a small case, it's worth it to be convicted.
The truth is, we are a tribal nation. Because if we were not tribal, and I want to go back to this, you cannot continue walking around with a mug which is clean outside and it's rotten inside.
We have become a fuliza country. We have mortgaged our country because of debt.
You've got one chef working and the assistant chef wakati anatakana koroge unga nini hayuko.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice FM, Malindi.
All right, it's Monday morning, and will the skies chase away those Monday blues? Well, let's see. Partly cloudy conditions in Nairobi at 16. We're looking at lows of 14 today, highs of 27. Nyeri is 12 degrees and partly cloudy this morning, highs of 26 and lows of 12. We're also looking at highs of 26 in Nakuru, mostly cloudy conditions at the moment and coming down to lows of 13. 12 will be the low in Eldoret, mostly cloudy at the moment at 13, going to highs of 25 today. Cloudy conditions will also be recorded in Kisumu, 19 degrees at the moment, going to highs of 27 and lows of 18. Kakamega is mostly cloudy this morning at 15 degrees, highs of 29 and lows of 14. We're looking at mostly clear conditions in Mombasa this morning at 25. It's going to go to a high, a record one this morning, and through the day of 35 in Mombasa, lows of 24. Mostly clear conditions in Malindi at 25 at the moment, also going quite high this morning at 33. That'll be the high throughout today, lows of 23. Records we're talking about for the month of January. 26 going high this morning in Kampala. Clear conditions at 18 at the moment. It's also clear in Dar es Salaam at 27. Highs of 32 and lows of 26. Johannesburg this morning is mostly cloudy at 27. 25 will be the high and lows of 14, where in Lagos it's cloudy at 26, highs of 32 and lows of 24. Kinshasa is clear this morning for a change at 23, highs of 33 and lows of 23. We're looking at sunny conditions in Beijing this afternoon. In China, highs of 4 and lows of minus 11 is going to get quite chilly today. Paris is 2 degrees and clear, highs of 8 and lows of 4. It's also a bit chilly in London this morning. Clear skies at 4, highs of 8 and lows of 4. We're looking at countries in Scandinavia where they're recording lows of minus 22. It's getting a bit crazy, guys. Cloudy conditions Sunday night in New York, read 6. It'll go to highs of 8 and lows of 1.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Everything nice.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Morning's done right. Good morning. It's 19 minutes after 6. Who is online?
Oh, Sam Owero says, good morning, lady Reverend Latif and Dr. CT. Everybody with their titles this morning. Eric, you've not said a prayer. Say a little prayer, won't you?
I have.
You have? Fantastic. Richard Shui says, good morning, guys. He's following the show live from Kisumu. Dagi Oguta, good morning. How is everyone there? Tuned in already from Nyakach, Kisumu. Cyprian Mora is tuned in from Nakuru County and says, good morning, Team Situation Room. Alex Mbogo and Robert Mbogo have the same name, tuned in from different counties, Nyeri and Mombasa. Good morning, guys. Lawrence Carrier says, good morning, friends. Glad to be back and join you in the room. You tuned in from Embu today. That's great. Kwamtusi Mwingi, and that's where Ondicho is tuned in from this morning. Waterman Jeffrey tuned in from Minneapolis says, good morning, folks. Tuned in from Embu County is Millicent Mumbi. Charity Minor is tuned in from hold on. It's tuned in from Nakuru this morning from Milimani Estate. Beta Ashley is tuned in from Machakos, and Master Dan is tuned in from 2-degree weather in Beijing this morning. And they're going to go to a low of 11 today. So, well, glad you're awake.
A low of minus 11.
A low of minus 11.
Oh,
it's pretty warm. Finland is recording 22 and 25 below zero.
Wow. And human beings live there.
Human beings live there.
Surely people. Anyway, City, proverb of the day. Let's see how you're setting the stage for the week.
It is useless to convince a dog that honey is sweeter than a bone.
Right.
Wasting your time.
It is useless to convince a dog that honey is sweeter than a bone. That's a nice one. It's a very nice one. Where is it from?
It is actually from Africa.
Those people from Africa. Surely those people.
You know what I sometimes suspect, even as I look through and try to understand these African proverbs, is that sometimes when, and I've said this before, when a saying is found in more than one culture on the African continent, it becomes a little difficult for you to be able to simply say it belongs to this group. And because you're not really sure who first said it. It's like, it's an experience that, well, across the continent people have had, and they have probably phrased it differently, but they are all saying the same thing.
They're saying the same thing.
Yes.
Okay. So, okay, so let's look at the headlines. We have big headlines in the papers today.
We do. Quite some. But one I want to look at this morning that's very interesting. We've been asking ourselves this question. Murder at home. When your flesh and blood turns killer. And this is covered by The Nation today. Police records indicate that at least 10 people have died in the first 13 days of 2011 in family-side murder of family members, and the trend has become a concern. From the stranger-than-fiction Warunge family murders to the killing of 65-year-old Joseph Njukuna Mbeka and the deaths of 5 family members believed to have inhaled carbon monoxide in Githurai on the 3rd of January, the home has become a dangerous place for Kenyans. And the question that begs for an answer is, what is going on? And why is this an option when it comes to dealing with some of these issues, right? Why take somebody's life? But it seems to be the way in which folks are going. Here's another story where police in Kakamega County are piecing together crucial information in a bid to understand the motive behind the brutal murder of a 65-year-old retired teacher and pastor. Miss Benedina Nabwangu's daughter, who is in university, and stepson are being held as prime suspects. The woman's body was found in a pool of blood in her house last Wednesday with a stab wound in her head. The 2 siblings are in police custody after they were arrested in connection with the murder of their mother in an incident that left residents in Mutahu village, Ikolomani, in shock. The 2 siblings are said to have disappeared without reporting the incident. County Commander Hassan Barua said, "We have some leads with 2 people in custody. The suspects could be charged with murder once investigations are completed." It has emerged that the deceased daughter, a university student in Nairobi, was in their house with his stepbrother on Tuesday night, but left in a huff, leaving behind their mother's lifeless body without reporting her death to anybody. And so now the police are wondering what exactly is going on. So the story now goes on to talk about, further on page 9 and 10, when the home is no longer safe, police statistics are showing in the last 13 days of 2021, 10 people have been found to have been murdered or suspected to have been murdered by their family members. According to psychologist Riziki Ahmed, we are not used to being holed up together, and the uncertainty of what would happen next heightened people's nerves, so people became highly irritable. I don't know that that's a reason as to why they're done taking the lives of their family members, but it's one that is being given.
So, that task force that was formed to look at the mental health of Kenyans, and they concluded their job and filed their report in July. If you actually just sit back and ask yourself, was it prudent for them to do that report, file their report in July, and then nothing else happens beyond that? Because the reason that task force was established was because there was clear indication that whatever was happening in the country, COVID, the uncertainty of COVID, the sudden loss of livelihoods was going to have an impact on people. And so the team was basically given a job of tell us what is likely to happen and what should we do. Now, they did their job. So what should we do? Has it been done? I think we're just seeing manifestations of it all over the community, not just with the murders, but with very many other things that are happening. People who are losing jobs, people who have lost their livelihood, people who've gotten to the end of 2020 at a lower point, mentally, financially, physically, in all manner of ways, and the government not seeming to be having a very clear and open program on what it can do to make people feel like they belong.
Look, in terms of how people are feeling and what their mental state is, I don't think we can adequately even begin to describe how people's lives have changed over the last year.
Yeah.
Already people were in a pressurized state. People were already, dealing with difficult situations. And then now all of this now threw everybody for a loop and plunged folks deeper and deeper into what they were already feeling. But to look at the mental state, I don't think enough has been done, or, in terms of pressure, in terms of putting out that information of who you can talk to, how you can be helped, in terms of how some of that pressure can be released. To be able to do that sounds so easy by word, right? But there's certain things that need to be put in place, which is why I would have said don't even put together this task force if you're not ready to do the work that is required thereafter. Put together a task force, unless it was just for information. How stressed are people in the country? How terrible has the situation become? If you're just looking for those numbers, then fine. But if you're looking for it to actually then do something about it, unless you're ready to do the work that is required after that, to make sure that you have a healthy nation, especially when it comes to the mental state, it's a lot of work.
But are we even sure about the mandate that they actually had? Because
Exactly.
Because if you've been tasked to do a thorough fact-finding stroke research on such matters, how broad is the mandate? Because there is, in such many cases, what the government can do and should do, but there is information that is given to the citizen so that the citizen can know and understand, because it is foolhardy to assume that the government will be in a position to actually take this bull by its horn and put in place a system that will be able to sort out these problems. It doesn't quite work that way. No.
It doesn't. You talk about scope, right? And what is the scope that you're looking at? Are you looking at children between the ages of 3 and 12? Are you looking at preteens? Are you looking at young adults? Are you looking at older people? The dynamics change for each age group, for example. So many issues that would be that are then catalysts for a depressed mental state. So yeah, like I said, it's a lot of work. But again, maybe the group was put together to just find surface level information in terms of how are people feeling, what has caused this, and if that was the mandate, then all right.
How they are feeling, you do not need a serious group of that nature to be set. You know how people feel. That is not difficult.
Yeah, but in terms
you can actually, you see, why are we even having this discussion? It's because what is apparent is that what you call a traditional family setup has broken down. A support system that was assumed existed has slowly been eroded and it no longer exists. Now, in many countries in the world, the functions that arise from this is taken up by the government, whether it's with child services, where if children have parents who are dead and they don't look after them, you can get into the system. We have a very shaky system when that is concerned. When it comes to people who actually have, who are buffeted by social issues, you have an education, but you do not know what to do after the education because the job that you thought you would get, you can't get. What system do we have to support? Okay, and then you compound it further. When you then have people who had jobs, knew what they were doing, but because of the advent of COVID, they're now not able to do it. Now, the problem with anything that affects the people who are working is that it affects their families as well. And that family network, we can only guess how far-reaching it can be and how one individual losing their job, what the ramifications would be. Then there are expectations that are brought about by the narrative of the education system. That, in our case, tends to promise one thing, but it guarantees disappointment. So what do people do with disappointment? What do people do when hope is actually diminished with every passing year? Because it's hopelessness that very many young people deal with. They don't know what to do. Yes. And no one seems to be able to tell them what should be done.
Big problems though that need a serious conversation, especially looking at then how do we deal with the society that is at this point in its lifetime. 6:30, time for us to take a break, see what's happening on the road this early Monday morning, and then we come back and look at more headlines. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Okay, it's Monday morning and things are already looking like they're building up. Thika Road from KU, Kenyatta University this morning is an absolute parking. Very, very slow this morning. Kawasukari and then moving towards the roundabout there at 45. That seems to be an issue, 44 rather. Then it's also moving very slowly from Muthaiga towards Pangani. The tunnel moving very, very slowly. Now, we know why traffic was crazy this morning. There was an accident involving 4 vehicles near the Kawa Barracks inbound. And so that is why we're having a problem this morning. Coming off Mombasa Road, there are foggy conditions. And so from the Machakos junction towards Salama, folks are being asked to be careful, guys, because it's not very visible right now. Visibility has been affected by the fog, so take it easy. Tafadhali. All right, so it's moving slowly right around the SGR towards the turnoff at the JKIA as well. There you want to be sure that it might pick up as we go along. We'll take a look at that as we come back. If you are running into any situations that need some, at least shout outs, at least to let people know what's going on, tell us on Spice FMKE on Twitter or text on 40127. It's Monday morning, likely to get crazy, but we want to keep it moving.
Chilled Spice. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
All right, 27. So just off the back of that story, we're looking at the state of people. Let's look at the state of our teens. Sex and poverty, major crisis behind a high number of teenage pregnancies, given coverage in page 2 and 3 of the Standard this morning. So we're talking about the high number of teenage mothers who've dropped out of school and are looking for menial jobs to cater for the babies, while others have engaged in prostitution. This is what has happened between the months of January to the end of the year. Many children who were at home ended up, especially for girls, getting pregnant. And what's the status of that? We have seen that the government is basically saying if there are any children who are now mothers and they need to go back to school, schools should find ways of accommodating them. And we've even seen reports of how schools are coming up with programs where, for example, it's those that require special diet because they are nursing, they get that. Those are nursing that they require some special assistance. So some communities are already working on that. But the numbers are staggering. And just looking at the numbers between January and May last year, according to the African Institute for Policy Development, 151,433 teen pregnancies just between the months of January to May last year. And if you look at the number of the children who would have gotten pregnant by the end of last year would be very much higher than that. What is happening to them? How do we address their needs? How do you even look at the needs of, just like we talked about, children who come from families whose livelihoods have been affected by COVID? From the basics of access to sanitary pads. The government has come up with plans on access to sanitary pads, allocated some money in the budget, scandal around it. What's a program for rolling out these sanitary pads to make them available and accessible to these girls? All these things where government has a plan. There are some aspects and some departments of government that are working, and there are some departments of government that are willing to work, but then there are gaps. How do you make sure that girls in all parts of the country have the access to sanitary pads? How do you make sure that girls who now have fallen pregnant have access to proper care during this period, even psychosocial support? So it's being highlighted in the Standard today, in page 2 and page 3.
I'm looking at also sharing the right information with young girls, whether it's at home level or school level. You'll be surprised. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but you'll be surprised that a lot of these girls who've gotten pregnant really don't understand the process through which they got pregnant. And if they had a little bit more information, they probably would not be pregnant at this age. It sounds so like it would sound like, come on, are you kidding? It's a biological process. Who doesn't get it? Well, look, if you've not been told, you don't know. And a lot of girls don't understand exactly what's going on to get them in this state. And asking the question to them by surveys and research that has been done, many girls, if they had the information, they would not be pregnant at that young age, just because they didn't have the information that they needed. So in line with all of this, in terms of government interventions for provision of certain services and things, even for those who've been pregnant, I believe there needs to be a huge emphasis on sharing information with girls, whether it is at the home level, whether it is at school, whether it's at peer group level, but basic information that we would often take for granted. Absolutely. That we
So
would take
basic
for
information
granted
here is
necessary.
sex is likely to lead to pregnancy.
Yes.
And then there's the issue of how to avoid the pregnancy.
Yes.
If you're not abstaining.
Exactly.
And then how to access those services.
Sure. Because if you say, for example...
So you're talking about now telling young teens, children from the age of 9 or around 9, let's say 9 to 18, that this is what sex is likely to do. And in the event you find yourself having sex, then here's how you can access condoms, here's how you can access contraceptives.
Here's how you can protect yourself.
You know, that debate... Right from the onset, when there were discussions, and we're talking about the previous century, about introducing, beyond just the basic understanding of biology, basic tenets of sex education into a curriculum. The opposition around it was that it would promote promiscuity, which actually is not true.
It's not true.
It simply demystifies something that ought to be demystified.
Exactly.
But then, if you actually ask yourself, and this I say from experience, is that in the field of HIV and AIDS, one of the biggest problems that one encountered was not the virus and what it did. It was healthcare workers and their response to sex, because the primary mode of transmission for HIV was sex. People were reluctant to discuss issues around sex. Reluctant, genuinely reluctant. Now, if you're reluctant to talk about it, how then do you talk about the infection when it has been sexually transmitted?
Yep.
So it's a societal thing that has to be looked at from that perspective. People are uncomfortable talking about sex. And if you're uncomfortable, the likelihood of you talking about it with your children is next to zero.
Yep.
Yes. So, you are right. Children walking around, and you know where they're going to get the information? YouTube. social media,
Or their peers who had a terrible experience. For
or their
example.
peers who know as little as they do. Now, these are the advisors. Now, again, it brings us back to the so-called adult and the role that adults should play in the lives of young people. There are those who say they've abrogated their duties, they have failed. I actually think that when it comes to parenting, many parents are just as ignorant as the next one when it comes to what to actually do. Because the best they can do is try and bring up children in the way they were brought up. But sometimes you forget that in an earlier time, child rearing was a societal thing. It was not an individual enterprise.
Sure.
Yes. And why I'm calling societal, you'll find, for instance, if a child seems to have issues, you'd find the parents, or specifically the mother, has taken that child to visit a sister of hers or a brother, because that individual was known to have certain qualities which would help sort out this particular problem if they couldn't.
Yeah.
That went.
Yeah, unfortunately.
The nuclear family has taken center stage and parents have become busier. And what that means is, and with the culture that we have, less and less time to actually parent. Because young children do need to be parented.
They do.
Yes.
Big issues. That conversation is not going to end.
No, it won't.
Hopefully at some point, we'll be able to get to a point where we can move to the next steps.
Absolutely.
Nation headlines.
Yes.
You know, we are at it again. When I say we, it is us in the media. Just read page 1. Is it page 0? Of page 1. Okay, of the Nation.
It's the headline.
Yes.
It's the front
Handshake
page.
faces strong turbulence.
Right.
All right. The full story is on page 4 and 5. Now, on page 4 and 5, this is what the headline is. Handshakes on the rock as Raila takes on Jubilee. I have an issue with this.
Why?
Why I have an issue is because the writers of this particular article seem to be saying that when you are in agreement with someone, you are not allowed to criticize them. You are not allowed to say that, you know something, folks, this is something that you ought to have done
Who's
and you haven't done.
Who's in disagreement? What does the story say? Minus the headline. What's the meat of the story?
The meat of the story is that the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, former Prime Minister of Kenya, is, and I'm going to read what is quoted to or referenced to him as a quotation. It is not right for our opponents to pretend to have forgotten about the promises and launch a campaign against targeting the ordinary Kenyans without delivering on their pledges. Understood to mean that Raila Odinga is criticizing his handshake partner.
Yes.
And I'm saying, yes, he is. And I'm also saying, so what is wrong with stating a fact? Promises were made, they have not been kept. Now, if you read the rest of the story and you throw in the politics around it, is that, someone is preparing to bolt the handshake.
There are cracks.
There are cracks, thank you. And they're picking on things and saying this is in preparation of wanting to move away from the handshake and to blame it all on Jubilee. Actually, but who else is there to blame? After all, it is a Jubilee government.
But I remind you, CT, that you constantly tell us when you look at politicians don't just say things. Politicians send messages. Politicians don't speak. Raila wasn't speaking to this multitude that he was speaking to.
No.
He was speaking to a different audience.
Yes, he was.
Right. So then that's it. So when Raila goes and says, for example, that this particular government is what they've done and one or the other, so it could be taken to mean that he's hitting back at William Ruto, who's the deputy president, who is his big competitor right now, if you think about...
Whom we, the media, have put across as his biggest competitor.
Yes.
Yes.
As a big competitor.
Yes.
I've not used the word biggest. Who is a big competitor of Raila in his quest for top leadership right now, and what Ruto has been saying. And here is Raila coming to say, but you are talking about wheelbarrows, because that's exactly the quote. You are going around now talking about mkokoteni, talking about wheelbarrows, talking about this and the other. But you are the same people who promised laptops, who promised IT centers in the villages, who promised stadia. So instead of focusing on what you promised and delivering what you promised, this is what you are focusing on. You're telling us about now mkokoteni and wheelbarrow. That was the message.
You see...
And then the other message now that comes from this opponent of his, who's the deputy president speaking elsewhere, he says, look, you guys, so you're starting now to talk about how this government is not working. Look at what Jim Orengo is saying in meetings elsewhere in the Nyanza region. He's saying this government should stop borrowing this much. This government has overborrowed. This government should now, in fact, he's even quoted here saying he's telling the president to dissolve the Jubilee cabinet because the Jubilee cabinet seems to not to be working. So Ruto is also hitting back from the other side. If you look at what Raila is saying and what Orengo is saying, and Orengo and Raila speak the same language lately, what would you translate that to be?
Actually, I don't
You
have...
take that further,
Yes.
and you say it is not breaking, but it is facing some turbulence. Because on the other hand...
How is it facing turbulence
because-
when the protagonist of Raila Odinga is actually not supporting the handshake, really? How is it causing?
Because on the other hand, you have also seen people who are on president's camp. This is AKA Senate Majority Whip, Irongo Kangata, writing to the president and saying, this thing, Mount Kenya. So there's all these mumblings and happenings. And you ask yourself, so is it a message or is it not?
You see, I don't have, I don't believe that I differ with you on your analysis. My issue was the presentation of what is happening.
Yes.
Because the headlines, and my issue here is with us, the media. Handshake faces strong turbulence.
Yep.
Which handshake? Handshake on the rocks as Jubilee, as Raila takes on Jubilee. How is the handshake on the rocks? How?
So you wait and see.
When the wind blows, is that turbulence? The wind is blowing. Turbulence is a typhoon.
When everything is turned on its head and it's
Yes. And the
make
serious
head or
move.
tail of,
Yes.
of where you're going. Or
No.
where
That's turbulence.
That is a typhoon. Turbulence is wind.
Strong wind,
Just some
actually.
strong wind.
So what you're saying
it
is
doesn't
turbulence
bring down the
is a
plane.
momentary destabilization.
Yes. It doesn't bring down the plane.
That's not turbulence. Actually, that's not turbulence.
When they tell us that in the plane, they don't mean that. We are experiencing some turbulence.
Turbulence.
But we'll get
Things will
through it.
settle.
Yes.
No, but turbulence isn't a strong wind. The entire plane shakes and it dips even. And then it comes
Sometimes.
up. No, that's turbulence.
Yes.
But
Does it crash? It doesn't.
no.
Does
it
the
doesn't.
pilot say we are turning back? Not necessarily. Not always.
But it isn't
Does it-
turbulence. This is what I'm trying to tell you.
What are you
It
saying?
isn't turbulence.
What is
When
not turbulence?
it has to be something untoward that causes concern. Otherwise, they wouldn't mention it.
Okay, so what's going on right now with here we have a few things said out of central Kenya that there's no support for the BBI. And then we have Raila Odinga and Jim Orengo saying that, you know what, you might want to be careful the way in which you're running things. That doesn't characterize turbulence. It's a natural it's a natural process
turbulence
that's
is
taking
natural.
place.
It's the back and forth. Yes, it is, but it's disturbing. It's not just, this is normal conversation. My issue is the writing of it, the presentation of it, and the headlines. That's what I'm saying.
Shown to
It's
see
your
that something
interpretation
major
of
is
it.
going
Yes.
on.
What you read here is what when you see handshake faces strong turbulence, you're thinking handshake has crashed.
No.
Handshake
actually, no.
faces turbulence.
No. I am saying crash and turbulence are not the same thing.
Yeah,
I'm
they're
simply
not.
saying it's something that causes concern. And I'm saying there is nothing to cause concern here. That's really what I'm saying. There is absolutely nothing. Words being exchanged, but no, there's nothing of concern. This is just normal politicking. But we are the ones who are making a mountain out of it. By saying, because this comment has been made now, this handshake, because Kangata has written the letter, now the handshake is in. It isn't.
12 minutes to 7.
isn't.
Let's take a break.
Sugar and spice and everything nice, just the way you like it.
The Spice Drive.
Did you have a great day? I hope you did. I intend to make it better from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. I'm going to be taking you home nice and chill. Everyone is welcome aboard. The hashtag is Spice Drive and, of course, Spice FMKE on Facebook, Instagram, and
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
11 to 7.
Okay, so Museveni was in full combative mood after the big polls win. It's important to look at what's going on in Uganda. Ugandan President Museveni was in combative mood and donned his military camouflage jacket Saturday night as he addressed the country hours after being declared winner of the January 14th election. So he cast his ballot Thursday, and he was in the same military jacket. We don't know if he was sending a message or if he was called, which he had appeared in during an address 2 days to the election. He donned the jacket during the first press conference after he was declared winner, and it was significant. There was a clear indication that there would be no niceties. The president's handlers say he puts on a white shirt for most business, except when he's dealing with party issues, on which occasion he puts on a yellow shirt. And on rare official occasions, he dons a business suit. As he cast his ballot early Thursday, he was in the same military jacket, which he had also appeared in during addresses 2 days to the election. So when he steps out in military fatigues, they know it is not business as usual. And he's not in a good mood. Chagulani's claim that the election was rigged is most odd if placed side by side with Mr. Museveni's claim Saturday night that what Ugandans had just gone through could turn out to be the most cheating-free election in Uganda's history. Museveni said one of Uganda's chronic problems had been cheating in the election, which he said he had gone through ballot stuffing, multiple voting, and other methods. He said that this had been significantly eliminated by the biometric machines that were used in the latest election. So, Museveni won with 58.6% of the vote, seeing off a stiff battle from 38-year-old former Raga singer Bobby Wine, who fired up the youthful population, where 3/4 were under 30 years old. The singer-turned-MP was among 10 opposition candidates and came second with 34.8% of the vote. And I'm going to give a final quote. I have been following what was going on according to Bobby Wine. I know who was giving money to who and so on. There was talks about a new Uganda when they want to bring the old Uganda. Why talk about sectarianism? This was a question he asked.
So Bobby Wine is under house arrest of some sort.
Yeah.
Okay? Not openly declared, but well, he's been barricaded and there's military outside. And you're sending out tweets saying that they're running out of food in the household.
He tried to access his home. There was military outside his home. He finally was able to access his home, but then...
now he can't get out.
Now he can't get out.
Yeah, he's inside and they're running out of food. They can't eat. So all this is the drama. Meanwhile, he has rejected the results.
Yes, he says that these are not the results
Straight
of
in
the
tune.
election, and they will be appealed.
Okay. Let's see how it unfolds. Head Business Daily?
You know,
Yeah.
anyway, we will look at those. We'll look at the politics around the Ugandan elections probably at a later date. Insurance cancellations. Something that is actually interesting. The insurance industry has actually been hit by something that has been happening slowly but most surely. Remember, one of the things that happens with insurance is money is collected by those who have policies, and it's only claimed after a certain period of time. But now, because of COVID, two things have happened. One, cancellation. People who've literally gone and said, look, I am no longer going to continue with this. I would like to get whatever I can out of the policy that I have. Then there are those who are just simply not able to pay. So the monies that could have been coming into the insurance system isn't coming in. Now, the total amount that they have experienced loss from is 5.3 billion.
Right.
Yes. When you look at all these things around. So it means right now, even the insurance industry is limping.
Yet it recorded some record profit.
You see,
from the health side. So general insurance limped because of non-remittance of principals. But then the money that they could have paid out, especially on health, there they made some good cash. They retained money.
They did. It was inadvertent. But what the comparison which hasn't been done is, yes, they didn't pay for health, but they also paid out when the insurance policies had not come of age.
Yeah.
So as to how you balance it, I guess they balance it, and that's why they talk about profits. But generally speaking, if you have a 5.3 billion shilling deficit, you can't be doing well. It doesn't matter how you put it, how you explain it, you can't be doing well. And also, if the numbers of people who are contributing to this huge pot diminishes, it doesn't matter what you say, you cannot be doing well.
I hope that finally insurance companies can look at these and the other turbulence issues that happen and see that it's about time they came up with new programs. How to expand the reach when you're still talking about below 3% of the population accessing insurance products.
The thing is, it's a lack of imagination on their part.
Yeah.
Because how do you then claim that you are a viable industry when the bulk of the people in the country can't access the services that you have?
Yep.
It means you have not tapped the market as fully as you could. So what that means is you are the one who's responsible for whatever problems you may be facing.
That's true. That's true.
Okay, so we've whinged a bit about making vaccinations and the plan to have the vaccine rolled out in the country public. But it seems that the Ministry of Health is taking this advice. So a team to make public government strategy on COVID vaccination. The strategy will outline the country's plans for the rollout, how they will be bought, where they will be stored, and priority groups. The Ministerial Advisory Committee on COVID-19 vaccine will this week publish its strategy to ensure equitable access to the drugs. It will roll out the country's plan for the rollout of the much-awaited jabs, according to Dr. Willis Akwale, who heads the team. It will specify how the vaccines will be bought, where they will be stored, and the priority groups to receive them. Health Ministry officials, led by Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe, have been issuing anecdotal statements on the country's plan without giving a clear roadmap, which apparently has not been in existence, this roadmap. So according to Dr. Akwale, the 11-member team is in the process of finalizing the document, which will be presented to stakeholders and thereafter made public on Wednesday. I quote, "We have to be meticulous in our strategy, otherwise we might tell you what we have mapped out, the cold storage warehouses, without seeing them, and when you go there, find it could not be holding biologicals, which are then not compatible with vaccines." So he explained why the document had not been available. Vaccines are an important part of stopping the spread of COVID-19 because they offer protection by reducing a person's risk of infection or the severity of their symptoms. So we're going to know after Wednesday how exactly this will be done, where they are buying them from, when they will be in the country, who will be the first on the list to get them, and then how this will be rolled out to the remainder of the population.
I can assure you one thing. That document will be among the best in the world.
Oh, yes.
That one. Vaccines arrive. In fact, the best time for the flight to arrive would be the 8 o'clock flight. So that they're cleared within 30 minutes and taken to this particular warehouse, which will have been cooled to 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. And then the people who will be handling these will be wearing hazmat suits. And from this point on, it will be that will be very, very... Now, my friend...
The actual Guinea.
The people who are going to be vaccinated are so and so and so and so. That document... Wednesday. Best document ever. Now, let's go from there into those warehouses and where those warehouses are and whether there's power, 24-hour power guaranteed into that warehouse that can actually retain the cold chain. All those things. Wait.
Eric, let me just mention this even as we come to the close of this particular session. According to the Central Bank of Kenya statistics data, Kenyans who are in the diaspora have been sending home an average of 6.3 billion shillings weekly. They reported that in the 2020 year, the remittances hit 329.41 billion.
329 billion shillings.
Yes. This is the $3 billion.
Yes.
That's what came in. And they're saying that now there's an increase. So it's a growth of 10.7%. Because previously it had been 285 billion. Now, Kenya receives 6 billion shillings every single week.
Yep.
Those are remittances, not taxes. And if you listen and read, KRA tells us that they're surpassing their targets.
No.
Actually, they do.
No.
Yes, they do.
No. KRA hasn't said that.
Eric, maybe we read different papers.
Yes, there's a story that had been written at some point, sometime last year by the Star.
Oh, no, not even last year. Yeah. Last week, there was a report that KRA had this the quarter that we're talking about from December. They were saying they had surpassed their targets. Yes, this is not me saying what I think, because I really don't know what KRA report until they tell us.
Okay,
but that's a discussion for another day. Probably tomorrow.
Kenya's biggest foreign exchange earner is its human resource.
Yes.
Forget tea, forget coffee, look. So what are we doing to make sure that we're getting more and more from such? And even exporting more and more people, taking advantage of the opportunities that, for example, are coming out. The UK now can hire more of our young people, even older people, who are good in plumbing, in such other skills. What are we doing to secure such jobs and such opportunities so that then we can get more remittances? Hii ni story ingine. Keep it right here. We have more conversations around the country and especially in Nairobi County from in the next hour. Good morning. It's 7 o'clock.
Spice up your life. Spice FM, Nakuru.
Okay, guys, still looking a little bit crazy on
traffic.
Inbound the city centre this morning. There was an accident that took place right around the barracks at Kahawa this morning. 4 vehicles decided to greet each other today, and so that is what caused that major traffic jam that we're still experiencing now. Outer Ring, Donholm into Manyanja is very slow this morning. Heavy traffic past the bypass heading towards KU again. We've seen that on Thika Road today, so that's what lies ahead if you're headed in that direction, coming towards the CBD. On Jogo Road, that's heading out towards Landys Road, is very slow as well as you approach the roundabout. Landys Road then into the CBD, also slow as you approach. Coming off of Mombasa Road this morning, right around the SGR, moved on towards, it's looking very slow as well. So Monday morning already looking crazy. We're going to take your comments and let's see where it is that you might be stuck. The Eastern and Southern bypass is also looking very good this morning. You can use that as a way to get into the CBD without too much trouble. Let's take a look at how things progress as we go along. Not to forget, you can talk to us on Spice FMKE on Twitter. Text us on 40127. It's crazy, guys, but let's try and keep it moving.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room.
It's 2.5 minutes after 7 o'clock. Good morning and thank you very much for tuning into The Situation Room. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. It broadcasts on Spice FM every weekday morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. We're also live streaming the show on Spice FM KE or on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. And for 2 hours every weekday morning, 7 to 9, we are also live on KTN Home. A very good morning to you, our audience on KTN Home, and thank you very much for joining us. C.T. Muga, as we begin the hour, traditionally.
It is useless to convince a dog that honey is sweeter than a bone.
Say that again.
It is useless to convince a dog that honey is sweeter than a bone.
Okay. That's a very straightforward one, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very straightforward one. The application of it is where we'll now come in and see if we can understand exactly why did these people come up with such a proverb and who are they targeting. There's always a target.
There always is a target, and there's always a purpose that particular proverb is put into play.
Yes.
Yes.
So as you're waking up to the news this week that Nairobi, of course, already has a deputy governor and there's an acting governor. And the deputy governor was sworn in on Friday before 2 p.m. at around 1:50 p.m. last week. she took oath of office, Anne Kananu Mwenda, having gone through vetting in the County Assembly of Nairobi in the morning with the Appointments Committee. The Appointments Committee presented its report to the full Assembly a couple of minutes later. The full Assembly approved that appointment, and now she was sworn in as per the law. And she's now the Deputy Governor of Nairobi. She is working under an acting governor who is the Speaker of the County Assembly of Nairobi, Mr. Mutura. Now, the story in The Nation this morning is that Kananu could be installed this week. And this is on page 6. So it basically quotes some unnamed sources and says, speaking to a few people here and there who understand what's the games that are being played, is that one or two things are likely to happen this week. That she is likely to take over as the governor of Nairobi this week. And then now, because she's deputy and there has been an acting governor who basically is the Speaker of the Assembly, now she takes over as the governor of Nairobi. She is sworn in as the governor of Nairobi. She goes ahead now to nominate her own deputy after that. And this is meant to happen pretty fast because there are people who are maybe scheming to go to court to block any such move. So before they go there, do that. The other school of thought is, okay, so now that we have a deputy governor, we have an acting governor in the name of Mutura, why don't we just then go to the polls and then we see what happens? So there's all these games that are being played out, but let's look at how we ended up where we are. There are many challenges that had been put in court for this nomination. Mm-hmm. We even start from the point when the office of deputy governor became vacant in Nairobi, and how long we stayed with the governor in Nairobi without a deputy governor. And this matter was even canvassed in the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court gave its advisory opinion on what then should happen, allowing a governor to nominate a deputy who then goes through vetting in the Assembly and is appointed. We saw the drama that was played out by Mike Movie Sonko, throwing in names, initially nominating Miguna, and then that not going through, and then putting it forth this name of Anne Mwenda Kananu. All those games that have played out in Nairobi. Where is the law? What's a proper interpretation of the law on these matters? And what's the political expediency in this? Is it the letter of the law? Is it the spirit of the law? Is it mixing the two? Is it also looking at what happens politically? What do we need to do politically to make sure that things work the way they should? Now, this is a conversation that then we consider, we ought to look at. And that's why we bring in a constitutional lawyer and managing partner at Manyonge, Wanyama and Associates company, law firm, Peter Wanyama, man who understands devolution and laws and around devolution, the County Governments Act, the Constitution itself when it comes to devolution and how we manage our devolution. So let's bring him in. Peter, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us again this week.
Yeah, good morning, Latif, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Good morning.
Good morning. So let's just get straight off on this. When you see what has happened in Nairobi so far, from where you sit, is this a legality or an illegality having Anne Mwenda Kananu as Deputy Governor of Nairobi?
Yeah, you know what is happening at Nairobi makes some of us cry for the rule of law. We are witnessing very massive illegalities. And people are just operating as if it is normal. And it sets an extremely dangerous precedent in the application of the rule of law in this country. And also lays basis for impunity and exercise of public power in a manner which the Constitution does not really contemplate.
Who has broken the law and which law?
Yeah, let me begin because I said there are massive breaches. So I'll begin to highlight some of the breaches so that it is crystal clear to viewers and to Kenyans on what's going on. On 18th December 2020, a vacancy occurred in the office of Governor of Nairobi County by way of impeachment of Mike Movie Sonko as Governor. At the point when the impeachment occurred, there was no deputy governor. Under the Constitution, the deputy governor will have assumed the office for the remainder of the term. And it is crystal clear in Article 182 of the Constitution. And we thought that was going to happen. So what happened thereafter is what really exposes this illegality. What happened is that the process of electing governor and deputy governor was kick-started.
Mm-hmm.
How do you kick-start this process? You kick-start this process by appointing the speaker as acting governor of the county. And then the speaker will hold office in accordance with the constitution for a period of 60 days only, within which IEBC must have conducted an election of governor and deputy governor who will then be sworn in to take office. So there's one illegality here, is that there are some people who think that when a person is sworn in as acting governor, that person can go ahead and make an appointment of a deputy governor and therefore defeat that constitutional objective. Remember, the constitutional objective is that you need to have a by-election and the election of new governor and deputy governor. So there are many other issues at play in that regard. One, the constitution anticipates that you are going to hold an election for governor and the deputy governor so that you give the people an opportunity, because one of the fundamental values in the constitution, if you look at the provisions of Article 80, is the principle of universal adult suffrage. Kenya is a democratic society where leadership at the national and county level is based on people selection. The people under Article 38 of the Constitution have a right to elect their leader. So you cannot impede that right by reviving a process which was never completed. Yeah, so that to me is very clear in the Constitution. Now, what is the other issue that now we are now seeing? Because what happened after the process of by-election was started by IEBC is that there were some cases in court. This challenging the nomination of Anne Kanano as deputy governor. These cases were withdrawn. I think there was an attempt also by Governor Songo to withdraw the nomination and all that. Yeah, so that litigation didn't succeed. But the massive illegality still, at this point, has not been exposed.
You say, Bwana Wanyama, that the process was incomplete, was not concluded.
Yes.
What exactly do you mean?
Now, this is what I'm saying. As at the point a vacancy occurred in the office of governor in Nairobi on 18th December 2020, there was a name in the county assembly, the name of Anne Kanano Mwendwa, which had been nominated by Governor Mumbi Songo. The nomination, let me be very clear, the nomination was done lawfully in accordance with the Supreme Court advisory opinion, which had intervened to fill the gap which was there before. The gap which was there is that there was no legal framework providing the way forward for the filling of the vacancy of deputy governor if one occurred. Yeah, so the Supreme Court now intervened and said that how it happens, if a vacancy occurs in the office of governor, the deputy governor, the governor within 14 days sends a name to the county assembly for approval. So that happened. So the process was not complete as at 18th December 2020.
Okay.
Now, the legal effect, let me just finish that point. The legal effect is that then when the vacancy occurred in the office of governor, there was no deputy governor, as a matter of fact. Yeah, because the existence of a vacancy in the office of deputy governor is a question of fact. It's not something which you can dispute. Yeah, so what happened is that Parliament subsequently, and this is one of the issues that I'm clearly seeing persons are doing what we call cherry picking. You cherry pick laws, then you say we want this to apply, we don't want this to apply. The reason is that in July 2020, Parliament enacted a legislation known as the County Government Amendment Act. If you look at the notice which was issued to notify the public on the nomination of Anne Mwendwa, they were only citing a Supreme Court advisory opinion, which has now been overtaken by events. Yeah, so they are cherry picking and ignoring a parliamentary legislation. So the County Government Amendment Act of 2020, which came into force in July, provides the procedure for the appointment of a deputy governor. It largely mirrors the Supreme Court advisory opinion. Section 32C of that act expressly, clearly, and unequivocally says that the governor nominates a name to the county assembly for consideration after a vacancy occurs within 14 days.
Okay.
And then after vetting and approval by the county assembly, then it says the governor appoints. The governor appoints. Now, this is the legality which I wanted all of us to say. Who has appointed Alex Mwendea as governor of Nairobi County? How is the appointment supposed to be done in this present constitutional dispensation? Because we have already stated that the deputy governor has, the speaker's acting governor has no powers to make this appointment. Because he's only not.
Are we saying, or can it not then be said that also the law is established on the assumption that there is a governor in place, without taking into consideration that there is a possibility that a governor could not be in place? So this is all being established on assumption, right? It doesn't take into consideration, which could naturally happen, that there is no governor in place. So in that case, what happens? And it seems to me that all this that we have seen that has happened since Friday is what happens in case there is no governor. Because by virtue of the fact that we're dealing with human beings that would operate under human circumstances, the possibility that there is no governor in place is very high. For whatever reason. Now here we are in that case.
Yeah, as I posited earlier, we are a society governed by the rule of law. We are not governed by the rule of man. So that if the law says the governor shall make an appointment of deputy governor within after vetting and approval by the county assembly, that law cannot be circumvented. And if for some reason there is no governor, like in our case, there is no governor because there was an impeachment of the substantive governor, then you cannot revise that process. That process remains totally dead in the eyes of the law. It can never be revived because reviving the process creates what is legal absurdities, consequences which the law never intended. For example, let me explain the absurdity. You will revive the process. You will appoint a deputy governor, appointing in quotes, because there's no one who is supposed. There's no governor to appoint the deputy governor, and then you will go ahead to now demand that the speaker, who is acting as governor, steps aside, steps back to the position of speaker, relinquishing his position of acting governor. There is no law providing the mechanics. How does the speaker do that? Remember, the speaker as acting governor has already performed the executive function, signing warrants so that money can be released from the county revenue fund, reorganized the county government, made up appointments. All these are law.
Mr. Wanyama, is the law clear on the functions of an acting governor?
Yes, the law says you are an acting governor. And the reason why you are acting, in fact, it's not the law, it's the Constitution. The Constitution is the supreme law. It says you are acting governor. And why are you acting governor? Ask yourself that fundamental question, then you'll get the answer. You are acting governor to run affairs for 60 days only. So that
yes, but are they stipulated in that what he can do? Do we also know what he cannot do?
What he cannot do is to undermine the very objective upon which he's in that office. For example, you cannot say that the Constitution says you're acting governor, and the purpose of acting is for us to have a by-election. Then you go ahead and undermine that by-election.
But is it stated categorically, or is this your interpretation of the law, Mr. Wanyama?
You see, look at Article 182, paragraph 5 of the Constitution. It says, if there's a vacancy in the office of governor, vacancy of the office of governor, the deputy governor is sworn in for the remainder of the term. If there's a vacancy in the office of deputy governor and governor, which is the case in Nairobi, then the speaker of the county assembly is sworn in for 60 days to act as governor. The reason is that you cannot have government operations coming to a halt. For example, there must be garbage collected in Nairobi, therefore policy decisions must be made, expenditure must be made from the county revenue fund. So you must have someone who will undertake executive functions at the county level for only a limited period.
I understand, but it says for 60 days. Now, if we're looking at the time period, all of these things have happened within those 60 days. One has happened with the installation or the swearing in of a deputy governor has happened within that 60-day period. Then, does it say that he or she, as the Speaker of the County Assembly, remains acting governor whether or not a new deputy governor has come into place? These are scenarios that we have to ask. Does it say that or does it not? Does it make provision for that or does it not? Because if it doesn't, these are exactly what we see, that there are small holes that are being used to bring in this scenario. If it doesn't say that you cannot, neither does it say that you can, it's not explicit. So if we see what is being done here, can they be called illegalities if the law does not say anything explicitly about it? Can they be called illegalities?
Yeah, let me say again, in a very crystal clear manner. The Constitution provides the framework, the supreme framework in which we are supposed to exercise governance in this country. The same Constitution, Article 3.2, says that you cannot establish a government otherwise than in conformity with the Constitution. And any attempt to establish a government without following the procedures in the Constitution is unlawful. Now, what we are witnessing is that we are on the correct path of following what the Constitution says. Then all of a sudden we reverse. And now we are saying, because when we reverse the process, we have created lacunas for ourselves. What I call artificial lacunas. Yeah? We create artificial lacunas and we are now operating in the arena of legal absurdities.
But Mr. Wanyama, where's the reversal here? I'm trying to see it, but I don't see it. There was a case in court. It suspended things. The case was withdrawn. So what is it? Was it time bad? Was the process? So where does the illegality come in all this? Because all I'm seeing was that a case was withdrawn, and what the county assembly seemed to have done is just carried on with what they were supposed to do before the case before the whole process was suspended in court.
Yeah, first of all, let me say that the case in court is at a very preliminary stage, very, very preliminary stage. What we saw in court was a ruling by the judge on the question of conservatory orders. And as I said, judges, are not infallible. A judge can make mistakes. If you look at this particular issue, a mistake which is made by the judge at the interlocutory stage can be cured later at the main substantive hearing. So from a legal standpoint, expect a decision in the courts which will make a final statement, a final declaration on the true legal position. What the court simply said, and as I said, the judge could be wrong or right. What the court said is that I cannot, as a judge, stop a constitutional process from being done by the county assembly. That there may be legalities, but why can't we allow the county assembly to proceed and finish the vetting? What the court didn't say is that finish the vetting, then quickly swear in the deputy governor as governor, and then proceed to commit further illegalities. Yeah,
let's take a break at this point, Peter. We're having a conversation with constitutional lawyer Peter Wanyama, looking at what he argues is the illegalities that have taken place in the swearing in of Anne Kananu Mwenda as Deputy Governor of Nairobi County. And we're looking at it from the point of the Constitution, from the advisory by the Supreme Court of Kenya, from the law itself, the County Government Act, and also the County Government Amendment Act, actually, that was passed last year, and all these things that have happened. So we're looking at it from that angle. Remember, a lawyer will see a point and argue that this is wrong. Another lawyer will argue the same point and say this is right. But let's hear from what Peter Wanyama is saying. Time for us to take a break. 24 minutes after 7. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. It's a Situation Room. We are on Spice FM and KTN Home and online. We'll be back shortly.
Spice FM.
Hey, it's getting hot in here. The media has greatly contributed to the moral rot that we experience in this country.
I remember a senior politician telling me, point blank, nobody steals in the field, it's stolen in the granary. So my friend, if you're going to win an election, jipange kwa granary.
I think we are suffering from Stockholm syndrome. Our violator and abuser is also our redeemer in our mind.
The whole political class, the whole political institution is rotten. It is based on ideals that cannot progress our country forward.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Okay, so this morning in Nairobi, it's partly cloudy in Nairobi at 16 degrees, highs of 27, looking at lows of 14 today. Nyeri at partly cloudy conditions at 12, highs of 26. 26 will also be the high in Nakuru today, mostly cloudy conditions at the moment at 14 degrees. 25 will be the high in Eldoret today, it's mostly cloudy at 13. 19 degrees and mostly cloudy in Kisumu, looking at highs of 27. 29 the high in Kakamega today at 15, mostly cloudy. 25 and mostly clear in Mombasa. We're looking at hot conditions today at 35 and lows of 24. 23 will be the low in Malindi at 33 the high and mostly clear at 25. It's mostly clear in Kampala as well at 18 degrees, highs of 26 and lows of 18. Dar es Salaam also clear today at 27. We're looking at highs of 32. 25 the high in Johannesburg and mostly cloudy at 17 at the moment. We're looking at cloudy conditions in Lagos this morning, dry for a time at 32 the high and lows of 24. It's also clear in Kinshasa at 23 degrees. That will be the low as well today with highs of 33.
Chilled Spice.
All right, let's look at the different areas where we are stuck today. Outer Ring into Manyanja this morning is stuck. Traffic is very slow. Donholm into Manyanja, very slow today. It was already packed at 5:30 this morning. We're looking at Thika Road at Utali. It's bumper to bumper. If you're not there already, you might want to think about sticking to the highway. The service lanes will only grant you a little bit of reprieve, but then you get back on the highway and then you will be stuck. Coming off of Kiambu Road is also quite thick, joining Muthaiga Corner and then moving out towards the Pangani Underpass. There, traffic is not moving at all. On Mombasa Road, once you get past the SGR, you should be all right, but then you get to Nyeri Stadium roundabout and it's stuck again all the way through Uhuru Highway into the CBD. So everywhere you look this morning, there is traffic. It is a Monday morning. This is one we are going to have to be patient through. The eastern and southern bypasses are looking pretty good, however. Use those if you can. Spice FMKE on Twitter. That's how you can reach us, or text 40127.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
It's 27 minutes
Mornings
after 7.
done.
This is Kenya's biggest conversation on Spice FM on KTN Home. We're having a conversation with constitutional lawyer Peter Wanyama. We are talking about what is happening in Nairobi. So the deputy governor Anne Kananu Mwenda was sworn in on Friday after undergoing vetting and approval in the county assembly within a matter of hours. So Peter Wanyama is arguing there are very many illegalities here. Peter, I just want to look back at what you're saying. If we look strictly at the letter of the law, then let's go back to the point when the Supreme Court gave an advisory opinion and said, and this was even adopted by the legislators themselves, that a governor shall appoint a deputy if the office of deputy becomes vacant within 14 days. And it also sets a timeline within which the county assembly must go through the vetting of this appointee. So this is happening after a period of a vacancy in the office of the deputy governor in Nairobi for a while. Then Governor Mike Mbuvi Sonko nominates Anne Mwenda Kananu forwards the name to the county assembly. And as the county assembly wants to begin doing its work, we have this injunction from the court. The process is halted by the court. And then everything else happens after that. We remain with the deputy governor vacancy. We remain with the governor in office. The governor is then impeached. Now the case is lifted. And the judge says, now I cannot stop the county assembly from going on with its work. So are you saying that the county assembly should have looked and said, it doesn't matter that we were seized of this matter by a constitutionally elected governor who was in office, who sent this to us, and now he's no longer in office. So what we're going to consider is the fact that he is no longer governor? Should they not just be looking at it and seeing it came to us on record before the impeachment when this person was governor? Should they not just be picking from there?
Yeah, if you think and look at issues along that perspective, you may be partly right, but that doesn't tell you the full story. You are partly right because the nomination of Anne Kananu was done lawfully by a sitting governor, but the process was never completed. The process of making the appointment along the way, in terms of the process, Parliament enacted a legislation, the County Government Amendment Act 2020. Now the legal question is, does this legislation apply in the nomination and approval of Anne Kananu Mwendo? The answer is that it actually does. So we ask ourselves, so what does the legal framework then provide? The legal framework provides that the governor, after the approval, the governor appoints. So how is appointment done? Remember, this is a democratic society. The governor can't just go on the roadside and say, I'm appointing, by making a roadside declaration. The appointment must be in writing. Yeah, the appointment must be in writing under the seal of the county government.
Okay.
Yeah, a public seal of the county government.
Okay.
So that is where now things are turning out to be a bit murky.
But then, if we now bring in the issue of the acting governor and what an acting governor can do, and you've said, so the acting governor, for example, was able to sign the budget and it became law. The acting governor was able to sign and appropriate money that has gone into the NMS and has gone into other functions of the county. Can that acting governor not also sign the appointment of a governor who had been nominated, who has gone through the entire process legally of vetting by the county assembly?
As I said, the reason why that acting governor doesn't have those powers to make that appointment is the constitution itself. The appointment of deputy governor is done by the governor. And there are reasons why the appointment is done by the governor, not the acting governor. The acting governor is there temporarily to allow for a by-election to be held. One of his assignments is never to appoint a deputy governor.
But was Anne Kananu not appointed by a sitting governor?
Nominated.
So not appointed, nominated.
She was nominated.
But after that, now the appointment is where the issue comes in.
Oh yes. but Mr. Wanyama, I've heard you quote statutes within our constitution, but I have not heard you mention something specific about the limited powers that the governor or the acting governor has. What can he not do? And where is it in the constitution that it states that he cannot do some of these things?
That's what I'm saying. In constitutional law and theory, there is the letter of the constitution and the spirit of the constitution. Now, the persons who are supposed to interpret the constitution are judges of the High Court. They have been given an express mandate by the people of Kenya to interpret the constitution so that they provide reference points for all of us, so that when we are operating, we know what to touch and what not to touch. So that case is still very active in court. But this is what I expect. I expect in accordance with the provisions of Article 259 of the Constitution, the High Court to interpret the Constitution, one, to promote its purposes and objectives. Yeah. So what is the purpose and objectives of having a by-election, of having a by-election in Nairobi? It's for the county, the people in the county to elect their leader.
To choose their leader.
What is the purpose of the Speaker acting as governor? Pending that, pending that by election. It is for normal operations of government to continue. So the other question is, can the Speaker undermine that objective by now saying, I don't care, I'm just going to appoint a deputy, and then this deputy will be sworn in, and then I leave office as I resume back to my office as Speaker, and then things go on normally. So is that what was the intention of the Constitution? So you can clearly see that we expect a pronouncement from the judges on this. That's why
Peter,
I say
have normal operations of government not been continuing? Has there been a halt in the operations of government?
No one is disputing that operations in government are continuing. Actually, operations in the county government are normally being done. The question is, can the holder of the position of acting governor make certain appointments which the law does not require him to do? That is the question which we are facing.
Mr. Wanyama, would I be wrong if I came to the conclusion that what I'm actually hearing, or what we are hearing, is your interpretation of the law, and that indeed there is nothing specific within our constitution and our laws that actually stops the acting governor from appointing Ms. Kananu?
Yeah, let me say, I've just finished a petition for the Law Society of Kenya, where all these issues are crystal clear, and I'm going to file in the next few minutes so that we can get clarity on the way forward. Okay. One of the issues that we need clarity on, because what we hear is that, and indeed this is the most logical step which they might take, is to proceed to swear Anne Kananu in as governor. We want clarity from the courts. As I said, the Constitution provides the framework. You don't expect the Constitution to litigate every minor detail. Minor details are provided for by Parliament. So at the moment, there is no legal framework by Parliament, and indeed we don't expect Parliament to enact a legislation to provide for absurdities. Parliament enacted a legislation to provide for the appointment of governor, period. And we expect that legislation to be followed. It's not a Parliament makes legislation in a binding manner. So we must follow the legislation which Parliament has prescribed. Where it is not clear in the Constitution, we seek interpretation. So today morning we are going to the High Court. We will seek that interpretation. And what we expect from the judiciary is, first of all, because of the immense public interest that this matter is raising. Secondly, because of the recurring nature of the illegalities. The recurring nature of the illegalities here means Anne Kananu is sworn in as deputy governor. Then she assumes the office of governor. We don't know how that is done. The mechanics. How will she step into the office? How will the speaker relieve the position? Because it was never anticipated that the speaker will leave the position of acting governor until after the election has been done. Then Anne Kananu proceeded to nominate another person as deputy governor. Then the county assembly voting. Then Anne Kananu makes the appointment of deputy governor. That is what one can really call as a coup, a soft coup. So we need the Constitution. We need the judges to quickly interpret this.
Mr. Jama, bear with me, but from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you have taken a legal position and that you are now marshalling arguments to support this particular position that you have taken, but that there is absolutely nothing in the Constitution that actually supports the particular position that you have taken.
First of all, let me tell you, I'm a constitutional lawyer. That means I have superior knowledge on these issues, and I can say without a doubt, even though I can't make a declaration for purpose of finality, that I will push for the courts. But as an advocate of the High Court, I've sworn to protect the rule of law. That means, as in my legal opinion and in my decisions, in my public pronouncements, I must make a decision and take a position which I think promotes the rule of law in this country. And the platform which I do that is by, first of all, drafting a petition.
Yep.
And then assisting judges of the High Court by appearing in court and making submissions in a manner that promotes these objectives of the Constitution. Let me tell you something. If you do a vote, if you bring 100 lawyers outside now, and you do a vote on what regarding the status of what is happening at City Hall, chances are 99% of them will tell you that there's a big problem in the regarding what is happening, and they'll be telling that based on their interpretation of the Constitution.
Okay.
But of course, we expect judges to make a final decision on this.
Okay, if we look at this without trying to pick at hairs even any further, now, are we saying that we're looking at Nairobi specifically? Are we saying that the preferred route would have been to go for a by-election, or are we saying that looking at the process and how it has been carried out was illegal? Because are we saying that if we had gone the legal way, it would have been all right to go through a selection if any of these legal lines had been drawn fairly? Or are we saying all of this should have been dropped and the speaker should have then called for a by-election within these 60 days? Is that what we are asking for?
Because of the situation which is in Nairobi, the only logical thing which should have happened is for the IEBC to conduct a by-election within a period of 60 days, as provided for in the Constitution. That is a constitutional imperative, it's a constitutional requirement, it's a constitutional obligation. There are no options about it. What we are witnessing is an act in political convenience. I don't know, some people in government think that they can avoid a by-election for political convenience.
Why would they want to avoid a by-election? I would like to understand this a little bit more.
Yeah.
Why? Just a minute, so I can explain this. Why, in your opinion, would they want to? I'm assuming it's a group of people somewhere. Why would they want to avoid a by-election if it is the one that makes the most sense with the current situation in Nairobi?
Yeah, I'm not a politician, but what I'm hearing from the grapevine is that the politics of Tanga and the Kieleweke. The Kieleweke wing of Jubilee does not want elections in Nairobi for the reason that they don't want to be forensically embarrassed by the political maneuvers of the deputy president. So the easiest path for them is to avoid a by-election in Nairobi and continue with their politics of BBI as if in that manner. So what I'm saying is they are undermining the Constitution so as to achieve a political objective of avoiding a by-election in Nairobi. Yet the Constitution anticipates that the only logical thing to do when there's a vacancy in the office of governor and deputy governor is to do a by-election. And indeed, at some point, everyone, including the Jubilee side, were actually thinking on the same
on going to an election.
Plan, and they started the process of identifying candidates.
I think
IEBC actually issued a notice for by-election in Nairobi, and gazettements were done, and the process was going on smoothly until all of a sudden someone says, there's a case of Ann Kananu in Nairobi, which we can withdraw, then swear in Ann Kananu as deputy governor, getting the approval by the county assembly. Then let me talk about the county assembly approval itself, and then you see the other aspect of the illegality. Was the county assembly right in approving Ann Kananu? Of course, the county assembly is the only institution mandated by law to vet and approve Ann Kananu. But what are the legal requirements for vetting? The legal requirements for vetting is that when you do you must do public participation. Members of the public must give input on the process leading to the approval of Ann Kananu as candidate of deputy governor for Nairobi. Public participation is supposed to be meaningful and qualitative. What does that mean? The High Court has said public participation will be meaningful and qualitative. What it means is that members of the public must be invited in social halls through online forums. If we are worried about the pandemic, in all the wards in Nairobi, for members of the public to give their input on the process of vetting. And then the county assembly will then consider the report and make the approval. Now, you can see that the manner in which they did the approval, in a very hurried hurried process, you consider and approve within a matter of 2 hours. Yeah, are you doing it in good faith? Are you being motivated by politics? Is that one of the requirements of good governance in the Constitution? Are you not being dishonest? Are you not undermining your oath of office as a member of the County Assembly and Speaker?
There are many things. When I hear you, Peter, I hear the argument that you're making, and from a political point of view, I completely agree that there were very many instances of bad manners being exhibited here by our political leaders in denying the people of Nairobi a chance to make their voice heard on this particular matter. This is, with regards to, and it has happened many times. I even raised this issue in regards to handing over of powers from the governor to the Nairobi Metropolitan Service. And then after it has already been signed, that's when you're telling the public, participate in giving us your opinion on already a matter that has already been signed. In this particular case, going to a by-election and then games are being played politically. You can all see the political game. The legal side of it, however, and this is where now you come in as a constitutional lawyer, as a Law Society of Kenya, and you're going to the court to seek, clarification on this. If I just look at the notice that was issued by the clerk of the Nairobi County Assembly, this is announcing that they are going to have the vetting of the nominee. The clerk of the Nairobi Assembly actually asked for submission or of anything from members of the public invited to attend the approval hearing and submit any information or comments on the suitability or otherwise of this nominee. The submissions were to be made by way of sworn statements or affidavits and should be accompanied by any documentary evidence. And it was even given where you can send them. You can email them, you can drop them to the City Hall building, or you can send them via post office. So public participation in terms of that was already provided for. And you were told you have until the 14th day of January, 5 p.m. to bring in all this information that you have. So the County Assembly can actually argue that in terms of providing for the public to participate in this, we did that. We issued a notice. We asked people if they have any information that they'd like to present to the County Assembly with regards to this nominee. You can email, you can call, you can drop a letter, you can send an email. You can drop the letter physically or send it via post. They can argue that. There's also the other argument that they can prefer and say, it's not clear what we should have done after we've already been served with this notice as a county assembly. We have done our job. Now, beyond that, it's for the courts to interpret and tell us then who nominates, who appoints, who. That is not our job. It's clear here that there's a law, that this had come before the law, so what happens before that? So I'm torn between these two arguments. The legal argument which you're taking before court, which could go either way, where the courts could actually disagree with you and agree with the other side. And I'll remind you that the Attorney General of the Republic is an immediate former president of the Court of Appeal, man with experience in these matters. There are judges who will sit there and they have experience in interpretation of the law and the Constitution as mandated of them by the Constitution. So it's possible for your case to go either way. But looking at the political side of things, what is it that we should be reading from this? And how can we safeguard from such kind of manipulation of loopholes in law, of what you're calling some lacuna here and there in law, for political expediency? How can we as Kenyans protect ourselves from such games by politicians?
Yeah, let me begin first of all by way of clarification. Regarding the law governing public participation. The law governing public participation is there. Public participation, as I said, is supposed to be meaningful and qualitative. What does that mean? You don't sit in the office of the clerk, issue a notice in the newspaper, and then you call for views from members of the public. And then you sit back, and then you don't even intend to consider the views. First of all, you don't give members of the public adequate time to send their views. And then there is really no intention from your end to consider those views. And then you say that is public participation. Governor Wambora was impeached by the county assembly in such a manner. And the Court of Appeal quashed the impeachment because the public participation which they did was really meaningless, totally meaningless. So this is what we are seeing in Nairobi. The clerk which issuing that notice, undertaking to to do public participation in a manner which is not meaningful, then it's not public participation. Yeah, so the law is there. Secondly, what is the other law that governs the issue? Assuming that the nomination of Anne Kananu was done properly and the vetting was done properly. What is the other law? The law is the Assumption to Office Act. Section 16 of the Assumption to Office Act provides that the entire legal framework upon which a governor assumes office applies to the deputy governor as well. And there are timelines. There are timelines. You must form a committee. The committee will look at the issue, organize things here and there, ensure that the meeting venue for the swearing-in has been done. The swearing-in is supposed to be done in public by a High Court judge, and the people have a right to attend the swearing-in ceremony. Of course, in our context, by observing the COVID protocols. So were the provisions of the Assumption to Office Act followed in the swearing-in of Anne Kananu as deputy governor?
There's time limitation in that, is there? There is a maximum number of days. Is there a minimum number of days?
The question is, it says within 14 days, so that you can give people opportunity to activate the other requirements of the law. For example, forming a committee, ensuring the deputy governor has an office, the deputy governor has a car, the deputy governor has been given adequate security. So the period which has been prescribed by law, and of course members of the public to actively participate in the process. So all that is intended by Parliament. There is the intention by Parliament to provide the procedure in that manner. As I said, Parliament legislates in a manner that binds all of us. So you cannot run away and undermine the requirements of Parliament by saying that we are cutting a shortcut. So there are legal questions which arise from that, secondary legal questions. So what are we supposed to do going forward? What we are supposed to do going forward is really obey the law. Yeah, let the High Court clarify the issues for the benefit of all Kenyans. But in between, we shall not circumvent the law. That is why you have the office of the Attorney General. That is why the county attorney exists at the office of Nairobi. They provide in-house legal support at the county government. At the national level, the Attorney General provides in-house legal support by advising the government on the way forward. Yeah, but what we are seeing is that despite the Attorney General being a person who has served as judge of the High Court, he is occupying a position where he is taking legal opinion that appears to favor political convenience, and that is very tragic for the rule of law.
At the risk of belaboring the point, Peter, so if we're looking at these institutions that carried out these processes that we saw right from last year, where we had the nomination of now who is the deputy governor, until where we saw the vetting, until where we saw the swearing in, these were done by institutions that are recognized by the law, right so far. Now, could it, from what you're saying, these institutions have gone against what the law has said? Wouldn't it be something that stuck out like a sore thumb if truly it was going against the law? But it is clear that it has been accepted. Even with what you say now, we'll go to the High Court this morning to kind of stop this whole process and stall it or stop it completely and have another process then instituted. However, these operations were carried out by institutions that are lawful right now. Are we saying that the entire process was flawed?
Yeah, let me give you also another picture to example, and perhaps this explains why the judge took the position that he did at this preliminary stage. Usually when you are challenging the election of governor in an election petition, the law requires that election petition be heard and determined within six months. Because the people have an interest on the question of whether that governor has been properly elected or not. Yeah, so courts usually don't say that when you have a petition against you as governor, you resign until that petition is heard and determined. Yeah, the strategy is to ensure that petition is heard as soon as possible, so that once it is determined that you are holding that office having not been properly elected, you cease to hold office.
Okay.
So in this case as well, one shall give the benefit of doubt to the judge. The judge could be saying, and if you look at the ruling, that why can't you allow this deputy governor to be sworn in, to be vetted, and maybe sworn in? And then the legal question on whether the deputy governor was lawfully nominated and appointed can be determined. So that's why in our petition this morning to court as Law Society of Kenya, I'm representing Law Society of Kenya, we are saying that, Judge, you see what you said, we understand what you are saying. But then why can't you ensure that this petition is heard as soon as possible so that the people of Nairobi know that Anne Kananu is in office illegally or illegally? So it is a live question which the judiciary must determine as soon as possible. So in this case, time is of the essence.
Okay.
So what the judge is saying, let the deputy governor run affairs. For now, I have not made a decision yet. And the judge has indeed said, if you look at the ruling, that there are very weighty legal questions which have been raised in the petition. But because of public interest, let's have Anne Kananu as deputy governor as we sort out this mess. What the judge didn't anticipate, and that's what we will be telling the judge this morning, is that now these people are going to swear
she can become the governor.
And become the governor and defeat the whole litigation in court.
Okay. As we conclude this conversation, we want to thank you very much, Peter, for joining us. Just within a minute, just clear the air for us. As we stand right now, we are within a 60-day period within which a by-election must be held. The courts have stopped the IEBC from continuing the preparations for that by-election. You are going to court today, and you are challenging the nomination and assumption of office of Anne Kananu as deputy governor. If she becomes governor, then there'd be no need for a by-election legally. What if then the court goes ahead and rules that the appointment of Anne Kananu was illegal from the very beginning, and it's within 10 days to the end of this 60-day window? What happens to the IEBC? Do they have leeway to extend the period by a further 60 days, for example, or must they hold that by-election within those 10 days remaining?
First of all, the High Court has full powers. The High Court is empowered when interpreting the Constitution to issue such remedies as expedient for the rule of law. So in the petition that we are asking the court to examine this morning, after we have filed it, we are asking after declaring, because first of all, we anticipate that Anne Kananu could be sworn in as governor. So we want the question of Anne Kananu being sworn in as acting as deputy governor and governor determined. If we succeed, then the court will issue an order nullifying the entire process. And if the process has been nullified, then the court, because of its full powers in the Constitution, can then declare the date when the 60 days period starts for IEBC to conduct a by-election.
Okay. Thank you very much for that clarification. Peter Wanyama is a constitutional lawyer, managing partner at Manyonge Wanyama and Associates, and representing the Law Society of Kenya in a case challenging this rise of Anne Kananu Mwenda as deputy governor. Asante sana and wish you all the best. We'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, thank you and have a good morning.
Thank you, Peter.
Time for us to take a break on KTN Home. We'll be back shortly with more conversations.
87.9 Spice FM, Mombasa.
This is a conversation that basically we roll over into the next hour. What exactly is it that has happened in Nairobi? Is it legal? Is it illegal? Is it political? Is the political shenanigan and illegality? Is the political shenanigan just expediency and trying to take advantage of some clear loopholes in the law? Or is this whole thing a charade and the people of Nairobi are basically the ones who are losing? So this is a conversation that we're going to bring in. I heard you asking and pushing, Peter, CT, what was the illegality here? And he gave his opinion over and over and over again and said this is actually what we are presenting to court this morning.
What did not come out clearly was the illegality that he kept referring to. What came out clearly is that there is an absence of a straightforward position that our Constitution takes on such matters. And I believe that is why the matter is now going back to court, so that an interpretation can be provided. The truth of the matter is that there are people who have a certain position about what should actually happen, but the Constitution does not categorically state what that position is.
And I think this is where the Constitution will not be completely, clear on everything. This is where now the matter of, like you said, the doctrine of the letter and spirit comes in. And those that are applying the laws also come in, and you ask yourself, so when we do this, what are we establishing as culture of the country?
But then we even have a County Government Amendment Act, okay, that was put into play recently. Even that does not give clarity on this particular issue.
Indeed. So we're going to open up this conversation in the next hour. 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. Do you believe that the appointment of Anne Kananu Mwenda as Deputy Governor, and she's likely to become Governor of Nairobi, was illegal? Good morning. It's now 8 o'clock. These conversations continue.
Spice FM, Kisumu.
Okay, yeah, is it still crazy on Thika Road? Absolutely it is. Trying to get into the CBD this morning, especially as you approach the underpass at Pangani. It's very slow at the moment. Let's look at Limuru Road as well. There's some traffic on Limuru Road as you pass then Village Market and on toward the Aga Khan Hospital and beyond there. It's very, very slow as you try to get into the CBD. On Gari Mathai Road, there will be an option to get into the CBD. If you keep going on Limuru Road, it might take you a while to get out of that. Jogo Road is fine all the way from Donholm to Mbotela, and that's in that direction. And then going into the direction of the CBD, it slows down some. Outer Ring is a mess, unfortunately. People are circling Umoja Antenna for some time, and all exits are bumper to bumper today. Okay, Mombasa Road. Whew, there's a problem here. Overlappers are also making it a little bit crazy as you try to get into the CBD. So everywhere you look, it's a Monday morning. Typically, it needs some patience and maybe a shot of something. Spice of MKE. That's how you can reach us on Twitter. Text 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room.
2.5 minutes after 8. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. As we continue this conversation, let's begin with today's proverb from CT.
It is useless to convince a dog that honey is sweeter than a bone.
Useless to convince a dog that honey is sweeter than a bone.
Yes.
Okay. Politician, tell them the law is sweeter than expediency. So some of the comments that are coming in, MK says, unfortunately, the lawyer is not giving any reasons to warrant any illegality on the part of the county assembly. In a few days, we will have a governor and a deputy. Now, tusonge mbele. That's what the comments are coming in. Let's go to the phone lines, and Benjamin in Migori has a comment on this. Benjamin, good morning.
Morning, sir. How are you, Eric?
Very well, thank you.
And the city Muga and Du?
We are well, thank you. Thank you for asking. How are you?
I'm well, I'm good.
That is good.
Now, my point of departure is one.
Okay.
Assuming there was no injunction at the point when the former governor also appointed the deputy, then probably should have assumed office.
Okay, yes.
Now, assuming that he never appointed anyone, then he would say the office was vacant.
Yep.
But because there was an appointment and it was disputed, and of course, court cases don't take a day.
Yep.
They may take a long time, like in this case. If there were withdrawals along the way, then it means that that process will continue.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think the law is making sense by saying that there was no substantive deputy. Technically, of course, there was no deputy because there was a court objection.
Yep.
But now that that has been waived, then that means you go back to the default where the appointment was done. I don't see any illegality there.
Then the other headache now comes in if you follow the law as it exists presently, that deputy is to be appointed by a governor. So what happens? What happens?
She was appointed.
No,
Yes.
she was nominated by Sonko.
Yes.
But now the appointment is just like when a bill has gone through Parliament and then it has to be assented to by the president. Who is this that who signs that signature to say so and so now is appointed as deputy?
Well, that's now let the court interpret that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Benjamin.
Thank you.
0719-012-600. We'd love to know what you think. Was there an illegality in the appointment of Anne Kananu Mwenda as Deputy Governor of Nairobi? We understand that, of course, there's a move in high gear to have her assume office of governor, now that the office of governor is vacant anyway. Wilberforce in Nyamira, good morning.
Happy New Year, Eric Ndu and the city Muga, my friend.
Happy New Year, Wilberforce.
A long time, eh?
Sana, glad to hear you.
I'm not very good in law, but sometimes we look at the chronology of events.
Uh-huh.
I have a friend, a lawyer, who educated me that in some cases the law is silent and gives the office bearers voice of reason, that way to reason out.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, the case in Nairobi, the assumption is it is Sonko who nominated Madam Anne Kananu to the office of deputy governor.
Mm-hmm.
The assumption is that if the county assembly would agree with his nomination and endorse the name, is almost automatic that she was to become the deputy governor.
Yep.
With or without another writing from him.
Yes.
After all, the assembly, having nominated her, it means he had already settled his mind on her. And the county assembly agrees. The only problem would have been if the county assembly had disagreed with him, which had not been done due to the injunction that was there from the court.
Mm-hmm.
That is one way. Another thing, I was listening to one of your channels this morning, that and they were giving a very good commentary that it could be another a trick as well for those people who may not want Nairobi to be governed the way they don't want. I'm not mentioning anybody. This is where, again, it's a possibility of the manifestation of the deep state and the system. So that we don't go into a by-election, because we might lose it. And if we lose Nairobi, we have lost it. I'm saying we in brackets and italics.
Okay.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing in Nyamira. You see, a good example. Where I come from, we recently had a nominee for the deputy of governor. Yes, and someone rushed to court very fast to challenge the nomination. Then very late in the evening, the injunction, the case was withdrawn.
Mm-hmm.
Today, the county assembly has already, the committee has vetted the nominee. He's supposed to be discussed on Tuesday. What about if today something happens and my governor, Honorable Nyaribo, my namesake, was impeached today?
Yeah, the office fell vacant today.
And then the speaker of the county assembly of Nyamira will take charge, right?
Yes.
Remember, Honorable Gesami will be waiting there as somebody who had been nominated but not been endorsed by the assembly. Then
Yep.
the law will remain silent. That's according to my teacher of the law.
Yep.
That the county assembly will go ahead on Tuesday. That is in case Nyeri is impeached tomorrow or today. The county assembly will discuss tomorrow about Gesami, and if they pass, they agree that Gesami was appointed at the office of the deputy. What happens? They'll inaugurate him. He takes office, and what happens next? He becomes the governor. So, the law of Kenya, in short, in other words, Eric, the law of Kenya, the drafters of the constitution must have also been tricky because they know ukiandika hivi kesho itakukula.
So you wait for it to
Thank
work.
you so
and
much.
do it.
Have a good day.
Thank you, Wilberforce.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. 0719-012-600. We are taking your views on this particular matter. So there's political expediency here at some point, and then there's interpretation of the law, and there's interpretation of the spirit of the law. Sometimes we argue so much on the letter of the law, and then you find that this letter is a bit silent on certain matters. So what happens? That's where common sense comes in. So what do you do with the common sense? How do you apply that common sense so that it works for you today, but also sets a good precedence for the future?
You know, the law talks about the length of time that certain processes must take.
Yeah.
But I didn't hear whether the time in which this matter was suspended because because of the court case, whether that abrogated any aspect of the law. Now, you see, it's like, in my mind, as a layman, it was suspended because now the moment it was withdrawn, everything went
goes back to factory settings.
Exactly.
Yeah, because
And
what you're saying is that a process was taking place.
Yes.
The process was not deemed illegal.
No.
The process was not halted for any other reason apart from the fact that somebody took it to court.
the court wanted to determine it, yes.
Now, if we look at it plainly, without adding any romantic feelings or anger or anything, if we look at it plainly, process suspended for this reason. The reason why the process was suspended was then removed. So in my opinion,
the process
or the way I
conti-
see it, the process
continues.
continues. It
Yes.
resumes from where it left off.
Yes.
Now you continue. Now, what did that process say? That an individual had been nominated, and if you follow it according to how it has already been prescribed, the nomination of this individual then continues.
Okay.
All right?
Uh-huh.
She's nominated. According to the law, the county assembly would then now vet.
Right.
It doesn't say anything about 12 days, 12 months, or 12 years. Doesn't talk about timing. Neither have we heard until now that there's a statute
No,
of
the law is very
limitations.
clear on 14 days.
No.
Within 14 days, nominate. Within 14 days, vet.
But does it bring in any other circumstance? Because we must
Yes.
understand that we are dealing with processes run by human beings.
Yes.
Does it bring
Was
in
she time
any-
barred because of
was
the
it
length of
time
the-
barred
barred?
because of any other circumstance?
So even if we assume that the first time barring has actually now been overtaken by events, in that nomination within 14 days, it didn't happen within 14 days of the office falling vacant, can we not apply the second 14 days and say that within 14 days, then after you have gotten the green light and the barriers have been removed for vetting, vet within 14 days?
But is that not what has happened?
That is what has happened.
Mhm.
Now, within those 14 days, have you applied every aspect of the law in that? In allowing public participation, in allowing proper hearing and sittings of the committee, in allowing the assembly to sit and vet fully and look at the recommendations of the committee. And then after that, the Assumption of Office Act, as was being presented by the lawyer. Within the assumption of office, within the next number of days, 14 days, you shall now get this person getting into office. Form a committee. That committee make a declaration and announce that this is the day that we are going to have the swearing in of the deputy. Alert the judiciary so the judiciary can send their representative, and this is the High Court judge, to be present. Alert the public so that they can know where they can see, this event is going to take place. Allow breathing space, for a room for breathing space, so we don't feel like we are swearing in somebody hurriedly. Have you applied all those things? If you look at the letter, then you will apply. If you look at the political shenanigans, and this is where I have a problem, is where the games are being played. And this is where I'm sitting, I'm looking at it, I'm saying there's a problem. The way in which the county assembly sat is like the county assembly had been whipped into, so this is a person, you're going to go through that process. It's a politics side of it. This person is vetted by a committee in 1 hour. The committee has not even written a report that it presents to the assembly. It just comes to the assembly with a summary of a report and says we have done it. Then the assembly goes ahead and has a sitting and a hearing and approves. Hey, boss. It's the politics of it.
Sure.
And I keep insisting.
What, Eric, I know it was rather fast, but who says it shouldn't? It cannot be fast.
It can be fast.
It
can be fast, but logically and reasonably so. Logical and reasonably so. For a committee to sit in the morning, retreat, go and consider what you have seen, prepare a report, and then present that report through the office of the speaker to the assembly. And then the whole assembly sits and considers the report. Not considers what you shall consider the report. So that then you discuss and debate that report and all of you vote on a report.
Yes.
What time was that report prepared?
They will tell you they read first. Look, if you go and present it to them now.
But actually, how long does it take to prepare a report?
They did not present a report. Are there records of a report that was presented, that was sat down and was presented, that was gazetted?
Have they been requested for?
Was there a report? There's no report.
Must the report be gazetted?
No, it doesn't have to be gazetted. It must be prepared and presented to the speaker.
And do we know that it wasn't prepared or presented?
There was no report presented.
No. My question is a simple one. Because I don't know. Do we know that?
You have answered the question.
No, you haven't.
I've said there was no report. Isn't that an answer to do we know? Was there
now you have answered the question.
There was no report presented.
Yes.
So when you have such a case, it's a politics that is just coming in to play games and using loopholes in the law, and that it sets a wrong precedent. And this is where we go off the rails.
You see, in a political...
We start going off the rails
Eric,
that way.
In a political
the same
process,
way, if we're to look at it and consider that Anne Mwenda Kananu was nominated by Mike Sonko last year, okay? So she was nominated by Mike Sonko. What would have happened? Should have gone through the assembly. Then there would have been a lot of political maneuvering here and there, trying to campaign, people trying to campaign for her, the whips trying to go and say, okay, guys, let's approve this nominee. I mean, this is a good person. That whole political process, and it's allowed for that to happen. If all that had happened last year, then she'd have been nominated, she'd have been vetted, she'd have gone through the approval process, she'd have been appointed as Deputy Governor of Nairobi. That didn't happen. Now, looking at it from the lens of the politics, we know why exactly this game appears to be happening this way. It's so that you can block the people of Nairobi from making a choice. It's so that you can block your humiliation in an election, supposedly. It's so that you can block spending money in a by-election, whatever reason it is being given. But there's a political reason that this, and you said, there must have been some talking between the powers that be and the person who had lodged this petition in court, blocking the nomination of Kananu Mwenda. There must have been some political talk.
There was a lot of discussion around this thing, not just
so that this person goes and removes their application. Politics. Then there's a political talk of then what do we do? Whipping people around so that you can come in and all of you are in the same in agreement that you're going to approve this particular nomination. All of you are in agreement that you're going to then have the nominee appointed. These are the politics. And the politics is setting a wrong precedent for all of us.
Eric, give me an example where our political process set a good precedent.
You see, that's the problem. We cannot say that because we've never had a good precedent. Well, we have several cases, but it can't mean that that is a reason for us to look at the law and the spirit of the law and say, then forget about the spirit. Let's just go with whatever works politically.
Actually, all this, in my opinion, is arbitrated in our courts. Because politicians will look for political processes to meet the ends that they have determined that they must pursue. It's something that has to be expected. In fact, if they actually played goody two shoes and actually followed the law and were moral about it, I would pause and wonder and say, hey, goodness gracious me, what has happened here?
So we're saying that in this case, what has happened is that, why are we surprised? Look, the same questions that people asked about Museveni's re-election in Uganda, and why is there utter shock? What did you think was going to happen? The same thing like this, as sticky as you see it, what did you expect was going to happen?
But
I hear Eric saying that should not be the case.
You said something that I really want to... why is there shock about Museveni's win?
He's popular.
The shock to me would have been if Bobby Wine actually won. That's where the shock would be. Museveni winning. Where's the shock? Look, people under the age of 35 in Uganda comprise 75% of the population. Meaning, these people have known no other president in their lifetime. They haven't known. Now, you tell me that you want to change the minds of these people. Yes. What Bobby Wine, if we were to sort of look at the results that have been presented, it's a very credible attempt.
34% is actually a very
good. It's extremely credible. It's extremely, by any standards, it's very, very credible. You see why I'm saying it's credible? I am looking at our move towards multipartism, and I'm looking at the 1992 election results, okay? The then president, Daniel Arap Moi, got 36.3%. Mwai Kibaki, 19.5%. Oginga Odinga, 17.5%. 1997, the following year, President Daniel Arap Moi got 40.1%. Kibaki, again, 31.09%. Raila, 10.92%. All I'm saying is, what is surprising, if you look at our election, was that here is a president who kept winning without getting even up to 45% of the votes. But the law then allowed for such a thing. Now, if you look at that, you would argue that the majority of the people did not vote for this person. So if you look at the Ugandan election, we're saying that Museveni got 58%. 58% represents a majority. Not a wide majority, but a majority. Now look, we come back to political processes in this country, and this particular one that we're talking about. Mbuvi Sonko won by a huge margin. It was not a small margin, if we're to go by those results. Up until the time where Anne Kananu was appointed, there was no illegality. Or rather nominated. There was no illegality.
Well, we still don't know. That matter was withdrawn. It was being challenged.
Yes, it was being challenged, but it is the Supreme Court who had actually given Sonko the strength and the legal basis on which to appoint her. Was it not?
In the first place.
Yes, it wasn't. Sonko didn't wake up and had this dream or had this vision. No. He was going, and that was his choice. He was allowed to do so. It was challenged. Now, the truth of the matter is, whenever there is such a challenge, we argue that the process must be followed. There was only one person challenging it. He pulled out. So, the objection was removed. Now, the moment the objection was removed, what ought to have taken place? This is the question it bothered me. Had this thing been time barred? Because if it was time barred, then everything that then follows about the illegality makes sense. But if it wasn't time barred, then the question of illegality simply is that it is being pronounced an illegality and there's no legal basis on which to justify the illegality that is being pronounced.
Someone has called in. His name is Duncan Okach. He's a lawyer. He's the lawyer representing the County Assembly of Nairobi and the Speaker of the County Assembly of Nairobi. Duncan, good morning.
Good morning to you. How are you?
Very well, thank you. And we thank you very much for calling in.
Thank you so much.
You've heard our discussion. So what is it? What's your take?
I've had your discussions, and from a point of departure, I think it would have been best if you got an all-rounded view of this particular issue,
right?
As opposed to hearing from one side in terms of a person who has taken one perspective and is also going to represent the law society based on that perspective. But I think in future it's always best, but I thought it's best that you also get this other perspective so that your listeners can have a 360 view of this particular issue and even yourselves.
Right.
The point that I will just want to take you very briefly through what has happened. One is that Anne Kananu was nominated by the former governor when he was governor. The process of vetting started and a committee was formed. That committee even had already sat and then was stopped by now the injunction that was given by court.
Yep.
So in respect to the court orders, nothing happened, but time stood still. So that the moment that Anne Kananu was nominated, her rights crystallized. So that you cannot assume that she then does not have legitimate expectation to actually ascend to the seat of deputy governor. Remember, in the case that was taken to court, the governor himself supported and even objected to the filing of that case, and even the orders that were granted. To that particular extent, fast forward, the governor is impeached. The question that begs is that, are we saying that actions by a governor before impeachment or before death become null and void after death or impeachment, or for whichever reason the governor ceases to hold office?
Good question.
If the governor did anything actually before, that action remains valid unless a court of law has invalidated it pursuant to a declaration. The same thing remains. The nomination of Anne Kananu was not part of the impeachment grounds of impeachment. That nomination remained true until the point where the court itself declared or this case was withdrawn, as happened. So that once that case was withdrawn, you go back to, and I've heard you correctly say, factory reset. Where were we? The vetting committee had already been established. It picked up from there. Public participation was expressed. It was actually in almost 3 local dailies of countrywide circulation. There are a lot of people who gave their comments for and against Anne Kananu. More importantly, the county assembly representatives represent the will of the people. You saw everyone was invited for that particular session. No one was taken to Kilifi or to Lamu, so that they were saying that they were blocked from participating in the public participation. So all members of this assembly participated, and we don't have any issue of anyone being locked out. So she was asked all those hard questions and everything, but the democracy indicates that the majority will have their way, the minority will have their say.
Okay, Duncan.
That was actually granted, yes.
So in all that, I think all of us are in agreement that when it comes to the county assembly then beginning from where it had paused, there's no issue. The issue is on the Friday. On that Friday, was there sufficient time to have those number of sittings? So one, the committee sits and vets, committee retreats, committee prepares report, committee presents report to the assembly. Was there a report that was presented to the assembly from this committee that actually looked at this is what we did and this is our recommendation?
I've heard one of your members say there was no report, which is not factual. The committee sat, a report was tabled, and it is on the strength of that report that the House actually voted and approved. So it is not only the committee that actually dealt with this issue. It went to the full House plenary, whereby they looked at that report and they voted. Remember, the law says within 14 days. Within 14 days does not mean you must do it on the 14th day. You can actually do it on the first day. There is no limitation in terms of time that it is within 14 days, but not before the lapse of 2 days or before the lapse of 5 days. So it is strictly within the law. If you are if someone is uncomfortable because of the expediency, of this particular process, that is just a thought. But the law itself, and I've heard you rightly correcting Mr. Wanyama, my colleague, that unless you can point to a specific violation, a section, it is not an imagination or a thought, because all of us, the millions of Kenyans, can have divergent thoughts, but we are guided by the supreme law and legislation. And where there is no legislation, the Supreme Court comes in to fill that void. One thing that I have to inform you is that by the time Anne Kananu was being nominated, it was pursuant to an advisory opinion of the Supreme Court on the process to be followed. Thereafter, in July 2020, the amendment that Mr. Wanyama has told you about in terms of appointment came in. That amendment in terms of the law is very clear that an amendment that touches on issues declaration, that touches on issues of procedure, like this one for Anne Kananu, cannot be cannot be dealt with retrospectively. It is the same way that if you commit a crime today, that was not a crime. That is that we have laws saying that it is a crime, and those laws come into force next week. That cannot be a crime because you didn't know it was a crime. The same thing applies to even issues of procedure. And common sense it dictates that the reason for that was because you can have a procedure which has started very well.
Yep.
You are in the midst of that procedure, and then a law is enacted talking about that a similar procedure but having several amendments or differences. If you are to implement it at the point that the law comes into force, it means that procedure goes back.
You start again.
To the beginning of it.
Right.
Remember, the procedure may even have issues of that when you're nominating, maybe you must consult the executive, maybe you must consult, and it may not have been the case when
you
that
started.
Particular procedure had been initiated.
But Duncan, what do you say then of this argument that, yes, we had the nominee vetted and approved, but then when it comes to appointment, the law then would apply, that the appointment needs to be done by a governor. And we have an acting governor who does not have some of these powers.
Whoever tells you the governor does not have these powers, it is, and as I've told you before, it's just an opinion. We look at the law, we look at the statute. Where has the powers of this acting governor been limited? Indeed, the moment he's acting governor, he can do everything that a governor can do. And whatever is limited by law, specifically and expressly. So that if we say today that he cannot do this, just because we think he cannot, someone else will come and say he cannot even use the official vehicle of the governor just because the law has not spoken about it. Someone can come and say you cannot even refer to him as a governor because he's just acting. It can create a whole avalanche of issues because we are now going outside what the law prescribes. But remember, over and above that, I've told you that the guiding law was the advisory opinion of the Supreme Court. That is advisory opinion number 1 of 2015. If you read it, it is very clear. In fact, this amendment was pursuant to that law. The only thing is that the law is also very clear that having started this process of appointment, remember, the appointment was within the 14 days after the Supreme Court decision. Having started this process, that is the same process that will actually see it to completion. But if today a seat becomes vacant in this manner, the amendment now will actually be enforced from its inception, from the point of nomination to the point of appointment. There will be no argument about that. But remember, the law did not envisage, and that is what even the Supreme Court didn't envisage, that you can nominate a person, the process starts, but before completion, the person who nominated is no longer in office.
Yes.
Even the law itself, the way it is today, has not changed that. And that is why we are very happy for anyone to go to court, let the court prescribe that so that in future, we do not have this.
So we get clarity. Duncan, if you don't mind, just stay on the line.
That is illegal.
If you don't mind, Duncan, just stay on the line so we can also get more clarification on this particular matter. Let's take a break quickly and look at traffic and the weather, and then come back and talk to Duncan Okach. He's a lawyer representing the Nairobi County Assembly and the Speaker of the County Assembly of Nairobi on the matter of the appointment of Anwenda Kananu as the Deputy Governor of Nairobi. Was it an illegality? Was it not? Live on KTN Home, on Spice FM and online, this is the Situation Room.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Sugar and spice and everything nice, just the way you like it.
The Spice Drive.
Did you have a great day? I hope you did. I intend to make it better from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. I'm going to be taking you home nice and chill. Everyone is welcome aboard. The hashtag is Spice Drive and, of course, Spice FM KE on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
The Spice Drive with Monique, the official soundtrack of getting you where you need to be.
All right, the sun is peeking through those clouds in Nairobi this morning. 18 degrees. We'll go to highs of 27 today. There's a chance of rain, but a slim chance at that. It's mostly sunny in Nyeri at 19. We'll see highs of 26. 26 will also be the high in Nakuru. It's mostly cloudy. Eldoret is mostly cloudy at 22. Highs of 25 and lows of 12. Kisumu is mostly cloudy at 22 degrees, highs of 27 and lows of 18. We're looking at mostly cloudy conditions in Kakamega at 22. We'll see highs of 29. The high will be 35 today. It's going to be quite hot at the coast with lows of 24. Mostly sunny conditions currently already at 28, 26 and mostly sunny in Malindi. Highs of 33 and lows of 23. We're looking at mostly cloudy conditions in Kampala at 19 degrees, highs of 26 and lows of 18. It's sunny in Dar es Salaam at 26, highs of 32 and lows of 26, while in Johannesburg it's cloudy at 17, highs of 25 and lows of 14. We're looking at mostly clear conditions in Lagos at 25. The highs will be 32 and lows of 24. And finally, for now in Kinshasa, it's mostly cloudy at 23, highs of 33 and coming back down to lows of 23.
Spice FM. Spice up your life.
Okay, the Eastern Bypass taking out of Mombasa Road and then leading towards Outer Ring today is clogged up just a little bit right around North Airport Road. Could be a solution to open that much more from cops who are trying to control traffic. Joga Road today, as we saw, it was open earlier on, but then now right around the roundabout at the City Stadium is clogged up some as you try to get out towards Landis Road or go towards industrial area. It is a crazy Monday morning all the way from Mombasa Road towards Thika Road. Uhuru Highway is what is clogged up now from the Nyeri Stadium roundabout into the CBD and then on towards Westlands. That is not looking too good. So it looks like everybody needs a little bit of patience to get around this morning. Keep us abreast of what's going on in your neck of the woods. Spice FM KE on Twitter. Text 40127. Help everybody else keep it moving this morning.
Welcome to Spice FM, the best exclusive radio station bringing you the best mix of the best music ever. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
9 o'clock. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. We continue the conversation right here on Spice FM on KTN Home with the County Assembly of Nairobi's lawyer, Duncan Okach, with regards to the appointment of Anne Kananu Mwenda as the Deputy Governor of Nairobi. So in the previous hour, we were talking to constitutional lawyer Peter Wanyama, who's going to court this morning on behalf of the Law Society of Kenya to seek clarification on this matter. And his argument is that there were many illegalities that were committed up to that point when Anne Kananu lifted the Bible and held one hand to the Constitution and said, I swear to serve the people of Nairobi. Duncan says, from where you're reading the law, nothing illegal at all has taken place. Now, let's look at then the political process of it, which is, with the law, we can say nothing wrong because Governor Mike Mbuvi Sonko, when he was nominating Anne Mwenda Kananu, he did that within the ambits of the law. When he was a governor, she then was vetted because there was nothing barring the County Assembly of Nairobi from continuing the vetting. And then she was sworn in. And then the questions that, emerge, why did it happen so fast? And you can say, well, there's nothing in the law that stops it from happening that fast. If we look at it then politically, don't you see the questions that emerge when people ask themselves, hey, so why is it that it's happening now in this particular manner? Don't you see that, Duncan?
Thank you so much. Indeed, those questions are valid and they are those concerns now outside the law. And you see, one thing we always tell people is that let us not forget that this process is not devoid of politics. The position itself of deputy governor and governor is a political position.
Indeed.
So it is expected. Only when you are a visitor to Jerusalem will you ask those questions, because this is not a church position. It's not the head of a church or the head of a mosque or something. This is and even those ones nowadays, you are even elected. So the moment you have an issue of election mentioned or a political position in the framework of the Constitution, then that one automatically means politics must be at play. So it is proper, it is okay. Both sides, the people who are supporting have the political issues in place. Those who are opposing are also opposing, as you've been told by Mr. Wanyama, that they are eager to have a political contest based on the two different wings of the ruling party. So politics is part and parcel of it. It will always remain part and parcel of any gubernatorial issue, whether it's deputy, even the nominees that are appointed, like you've had a caller indicating, like in the Nyamira issue. Even when you nominate, there will still be some issues of political aspects. But what we look at, and our Bible in this country and in these matters, is the Constitution and the laws, statutes enacted pursuant to that. If it is not illegal, let's leave it at that. If we think it will be better, that is why we always say there's room for improvement. Statutes can always be amended. We can always come up with fresh legislations. And that's why we have parliamentarians whom we are paying every day to do this. This is their day job. Let them take it forward. Let us have then amendments. Let Wanyama and LSK and whoever feels that this process should now be should be sanitized. Let them take those proposals. We still use the constitutional channel to come
Duncan,
up with
let me ask you this
direction.
question. Because as a layman, what I'm hearing is legal positions being aired out, someone giving his legal position, another one giving their legal position. But I want to touch on this matter of public participation. If you look at the framework that brings about what we are calling public participation, one of the things that a county assembly must do is conduct its affairs in the open, isn't it? Now, you said very correctly that the public, there was public participation in that some of our dailies indicated what the public were allowed to do. But what I have not heard or seen is what you did with the emails that were sent, the opinions that was letters, whether they were opened and whether the contents were actually discussed. Is this not part of the public participation? And whether it was out in the open for people to know this is what people actually said about this process?
That is a very good question, and the answer to that is also available. The fact is, the law says you must have public participation for at least 7 days. That was complied with.
How exactly?
As you rightly say, that's what I'm answering. As you rightly say, there was a call for views from the public. Remember, we are doing this still within the Ministry of Health directives, so that you cannot have those large public barazas, which would actually be against the directives. So what happened is what happened even when we were dealing with the budget, even when my client was dealing with the issue of extension of the speaker and all that. And what has been happening is that they call for the views. These views are brought in both online and both physically. All the ward representatives they have channels through which they also disseminate questionnaires. And I can tell you the responses that came in, both directly and both through the virtual platforms, were numerous. And what happens is that they are disseminated to the decision makers. One, the vetting committee. Two, all the members of the house, so that they have an access to all the information. And pursuant to that, this information is supposed to help them, like Mr. Wanyama said, should be qualitative and meaningful. It was meaningful because now, having given the people who are to make the decision of whether to vet, whether to approve or not, it is important to put this information to them, because you and I may have this information, but we have no role in law to in terms of now influencing this, apart from my views. So the members that we elect, remember, Nairobians have elected representatives to represent them, at least for the 5 years that they've given them that mandate. So that once they are empowered with this information and with my view, it is for them to now use it correctly while they are vetting and while they are dealing with the issue of approval.
I do not argue with you there at all, Duncan. You are absolutely on spot. But that information which is provided with the public, should the public then not know what it is that their views amounted to? Because if it
the
goes
pub-
before the committees, do we know what was taken before the committees? We do not. And part of the things that are required by these very same dictates of public participation is transparency. Where's the transparency here?
What I will tell you is that even in law, let me tell you, there are processes where you are even allowed as a member of the public to participate physically.
Right.
No one was stopped from participating. And there are those processes which are by suppose if it is indicated in the Constitution that these must happen in the public glare, like the issue of vetting of nominees for judgeship, for Supreme Court membership. It is stated in law. On this one, there's nothing that was stated in law that you have to go out there in Tomboya Street, sit there and do this public participation. It is not. And let me tell you, many aspects of these are taken in. Remember, when the president decides to nominate his ministers, or he does not go out there to now do it in public and to ask you for your views.
But
in terms of what happened in the vetting, there is the call for public participation by the National Assembly, and the committee also will now put those questions that have been brought forth or any objections to the candidate. In this particular case of Anne Mwenda Kananu, do we know how many memoranda were received by the county assembly? Was there any question from a member of the public that was put forth to the candidate expressly saying, we received this from so-and-so, and this is what they were asking? What is your response? That is properly documented, and that is why I was saying, indeed, the first step should have been, if we had this notice that you'd be discussing this, I would easily forward to you that, but it is documented. I have all that, and I believe it is any member of the public can get access to that pursuant to the constitutional provision to access of information. It is very clearly documented, the number of responses. Whatever happened in the vetting committee is minuted, and it is there for the public to access and can even be used by anyone who wants to go to court if they want to challenge. Whatever happened in the House is also documented in the Handshake, which is publicly available. Remember, I've told you everyone was invited, at least when we were dealing with the issue of the Sonko All-Star. There was that issue that some members were even claiming they were not, some other people accessed using their credentials.
Yes.
On this one, and even the people who were in the House, you'll see clearly people well allied to the former governor seated there. They posed their questions, hard questions, I can tell you. And that is even for Anne Kananu. Very hard questions, I can tell you. Some may even have been unfair, but that is the process of the law.
Okay,
and she answered those questions, and those questions and the answers are available for anyone who wants to access.
Duncan, I think all of these questions are coming from, the fact that a lot of this happened with such speed and alacrity, whereas I don't see where the law was abrogated. I must ask, though, that all these things happened really, really quickly, within a week, within a number of days, and then on Friday, within hours, all of these things came into play and then were established. So we've seen situations before where things then have been done in such a manner, even before sundown, certain things were instituted, right, on a particular day. We're seeing the same thing happen again here, which would give rise to the belief by very many people, the same public that we're talking about, to say that, is there a cover-up going on somewhere? Is there something that is untoward that would mean all of this needs to happen in such rapid succession? Because it happened so quickly, do you see why then the questions now are starting to pop up? That maybe there is something that is that someone somewhere is seeking to cover up. Maybe there is something that is trying to be avoided by the nature of the way in which things happened. Why so speedily? And that's the question that I think needs to be answered.
There are several reasons. I'll give you three. One is that the whatever happened, like you are indicating at that time, there was no law at that time that you cannot swear someone at this particular time or after this particular time. Pursuant to that, the swearing in was legal. But later on, because we thought it was better, we said we must swear in someone between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. So we now have a law. Swearing someone outside that time it will be an issue. In terms of how fast you've sworn in someone, fast is relative. America had its elections in November. They'll be swearing someone, the president-elect, on 20th of this month.
Yep.
In our system, we don't wait for that long. So someone in America will be saying we do it very fast, but our constitution and our law is different from theirs. So as long as you are within your law, and that's why I'm saying, you may say it is not good, but the other person will say, why should we just sit there and wait? Remember, the moment you wait, and this is the third reason, you give some legitimate expectation and anxiety to people who would also want to maybe vie. It is only important for them to know that this process then, as soon as possible, may not be so. And so they may save their time and breath for 2022 August.
Whereby you could also be giving them another indication, even while you're trying to say, all right, here you have an opportunity, but essentially it's not going to happen because this process has already taken place. You could also be passing on a message to them that there was something else that you were trying to hide. Do you see that? And do you think that there's any need to explain away that possibility to them? Because it is clear that they will not be taking your position here, that the reason why this was done so quickly was to take away any anxiety from them in terms of having to run during a by-election. They're going to see it as something totally different. Or are you saying their opinion in this case doesn't matter?
No, their opinion and their rights matter most. And that is why it is only fair to inform them at the earliest opportunity so that they do not continue and gain what we call legitimate expectations.
So you're being considerate of their hopes.
It is even them that, and more so, leave alone even them. We even look at the country and the Kenyan populace as a whole. That is why you look forward and look at IEBC. Remember, IEBC has a role and a duty to organize elections properly. So that it's not just a matter of having Nairobi gubernatorial elections for the sake of it. Then it will create chaos. It will breed issues of it was not proper. And the reason will be IEBC was not given ample time to prepare. That is why it is important to notify IEBC that this is the position of the law. But more importantly, remember, as you are notifying IEBC that this is the position of the law, IEBC had already issued a notice for elections on February 18th.
Yep.
They will be expending funds for the public today, tomorrow, and the day after within the process of that confusion that they do. For them, they want to be ready. Remember, if we are not going to have elections and if that becomes it, the funds that have been expended in preparations will be in their millions and millions. So to that extent, it is only proper to not to procrastinate it because it will also breed other issues.
Okay.
Duncan, let me ask this question, Duncan. So
yes,
there's widespread expectation that Anne Kananu Mwenda will finish this week not as deputy governor but as governor. If we look at the position the way it is right now, in law, we have a deputy governor, we have an acting governor. Should we be having that situation?
One thing is clear is that the acting governor was sworn in amidst that confusion of whether there was a deputy governor or not. And until the court pronounced themselves, that case was actually withdrawn, we will still have the acting governor acting for only 60 days and elections will have been carried out.
Yep.
Then it so happens that this case was withdrawn. So what will happen is that the acting governor has 60 days to still complete his period. The reason I say so is because Governor Sonko went to court. Former Governor Sonko went to court, obtained orders suspending the Gazette notice by IBC.
Yep.
Once he obtained those orders suspending, it conserved and preserved his position. Because remember, in his petition, he is challenging the entire impeachment process, from the county assembly to the Senate to the Gazette notices. So that if that goes through, it will be akin to what Wambora did in the previous years, whereby he still maintained and became governor until the general elections. So what Sonko was doing is a replica of that. And he then has obtained orders preserving that position of governorship. So Anne Kananu cannot even be sworn in as governor, and that has been stated in court severally by all sides, that we have orders, at least by Governor Sonko, preserving that. Unless Governor Sonko would have withdrawn his petition like he had actually threatened, that's the only way that Anne Kananu would automatically then need to be sworn in.
Okay,
But
now
during
we're
the
confused.
pendency
Just
of his case,
for clarification
during
here.
the pendency of his case,
For the clarification here, just before you go on,
yeah.
as you continue, are you saying that as far as the County Assembly of Nairobi is concerned, there is no vacancy in the office of governor?
As far as the county assembly is concerned, there is a vacancy in the office of governor, but court orders have been issued to preserve, to ensure that you do not fill in that vacancy. The same way Anne Kananu had orders that she should not fill in the position of deputy governor until she was actually vetted. The same thing now happens. Sonko rushed to court to preserve that particular position. So the vacancy remains. The court has not pronounced itself that there is no vacancy. But to enable his petition not to become an academic exercise or to be overtaken by events, the court has preserved and said, for the time being, there should be no elections. Because if Sonko's petition goes through, there'll be no need of elections in any case. Because it means the court will actually give a declaration that all what happened leading to the impeachment of Sonko is null and void. That Sonko continues to become governor, maybe until the processes of appeal.
But by the same, by that, if I were to follow that same line of thinking, it therefore also means that should the court find against Sonko, then it means that position will be vacant, will it not be?
Exactly.
Now, if it is vacant and you already have a deputy in place, then it therefore means that once again there will be no elections because the deputy will just now ascend and become governor. Will she not?
That's automatic. That is what Article 182 says.
Well, this Article 182 is very interesting, isn't it?
It says that, and that is the reason why in Nyamira you didn't have any by-elections. Why are we not complaining there? We didn't have by-elections there. We didn't have by-elections in Bomet. Someone ascended after the late governor passed on. Did we complain? Article 182 has been there since we promulgated this constitution.
Duncan
so it's not something
you have put forward your case very strongly and very convincingly.
Thank you very much, Duncan. Thank you very much for calling in and for sharing this perspective from the County Assembly of Nairobi. Duncan Okach is the lawyer representing the County Assembly and the Speaker of the Nairobi County Assembly. Asante sana for your call, and we wish you a good day.
Thank you, you too.
It's time for us to also wish a good day to our audience on KTN Home who've been with us since 7 o'clock. It's now coming up to 9 o'clock. It's only 5 minutes to 9. Join us again tomorrow, KTN Home. But the show continues on Spice FM. It airs every weekday morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. In the next hour, we talk about the handshake and politics of the handshake. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Okay, so 3.5 minutes to 9, and you've heard the conversation from the lawyer for the City County of Nairobi, the County Assembly of Nairobi, and what he says. All right, so yeah, the LSK is going to court, it's raising this, and the County Assembly is ready to go and respond in this particular manner. In all of this, it's lawyer 1 and lawyer 2 arguing, as always happens before a judge, and then the judge will listen and the judge will look at the law and the judge will interpret the law. We'll hear what the judge then says. But politically speaking, there's still an issue here that needs to be ironed out. So yes, it's a political process, and that's exactly what it is. And that's why we have laws. But at the same time, the law expects that the politicians who are in charge will act in the best interest, not of their own selves, of themselves, but in the best interest of the public. Do you feel the best interest of the public has been taken into consideration in this whole game that has played out since the 18th day of December when Sonko was impeached in the Senate?
If that's where they were starting out, that would be a question to ask. But I don't think that the will of the people or the interest of the people was their point in the first place. There was something that they were trying to do.
Even with the impeachment.
And as usual, even the will of the people is something that comes in at the very end of the conversation. But it doesn't look as if that was what was on the radar in the very first place. And I don't think it would be very difficult to have any of these processes void of the political interest, the political angle. It rarely happens that you would see something like this going on and that you would not be able to pick political interest or expediency in any of this. So it's very clear that was playing out here. And look, just as one side is going to be nitpicking on the law, so is the other side. That really there was no law that was being broken. And the other side, people are going to say, well, there are certain loopholes that people are using to their own advantage. I don't think there's a case where that doesn't happen. I mean, even pick
globally,
anything,
anywhere.
Pick anything, pick anywhere that you want to look at. When people are trying to explain or interpret or perceive the law, it is how it is apparent to them. And then they start to pick at those crosshairs and see what can I get from this. And I think we see an example of that playing out here.
But I keep
the will of the people, I'm sorry. Yeah. But that usually comes in as a last.
Why I keep insisting on having precedents, on having proper systems and culture set in place is for such. It's so that in the future, even though you are doing something that will help you politically, you also are bound by this, you're tethered to this one principle of the greater good of the people, of the greater good manners of the people in the society, that you're operating within a certain dictates that are universally accepted and established, that this is how we do. We know there's nothing illegal about you breaking wind, but we also know there's nothing illegal about you breaking wind in front of people. But it's established that no, there are some things that you'll not do that will be considered bad manners if you just sat down and you break wind.
You know, you're assuming
the dinner table.
You're assuming a certain long-sighted wisdom in decision making for
assuming
people
that people are applying this wisdom.
Yes, and you're assuming that this is something that will come into play, especially when people have power and they know that expediency is actually in their favor.
Let's continue this conversation. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Good morning. It's 9 o'clock.
Spice up your life. 94.4 Spice FM.
Okay, so
Nairobi.
folks are joining Thika Road from Muthaiga towards Pangani suicidal this morning. It's crazy. Avoid Kiambu Road by all means if you can. Traffic is mercilessly huge all the way from Rock City this morning, and it's not moving. And if it is moving extremely slowly. So talk about spectator spots on our roads today. Uhuru Highway from the Nyayo Stadium roundabout into the CBD and then on towards Westlands, moving very slowly as well, bumper to bumper. Gonna sit there for 30 minutes in some cases before you move. Jogo Road also giving off those same vibes. Coming off from Gong Road, trying to approach the city mortuary roundabout, also very slow. Then as you go towards Valley Road, it picks up just a little bit as you get into the CBD. So we're still in traffic hour, officially even past 9 o'clock today. Let's take a look at what it looks like in about half hour or so. If you get stuck somewhere, let us know. Remember, the eastern and southern bypasses now looking pretty good. You can use those to get in and out of the CBD longer, but you won't be sitting in one place for a long time. Spice FM KE on Twitter. Text 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room.
It's 2 after 9. These conversations continue right here on Spice FM and online. CT, as we begin this new hour, what is the proverb?
It is useless to convince a dog that honey is sweeter than a bone.
Okay. So is that what I'm trying to do? It's trying to convince these dogs that, You can sugarcoat, you can honeycoat the bone.
However, a bone is a bone is a bone.
Okay. Okay. So the president, as we move into this conversation, has been having an interview on vernacular Kikuyu radio stations this morning. And he said, he was pushing the agenda of the BBI and saying BBI is a good thing. BBI is a way to go. And from what we are picking out is that he said, look, let's have this referendum. Stop talking about, there's not enough money to hold a referendum. Do you know how much money is stolen every year anyway in this country? So if a referendum is going to cost us about 2 billion shillings, we lose so much in the country anyway. So we'll discuss that as we continue. Handshake, fight back, Tanga Tanga Kieleweke, ODM, Uhuru fire your ministers. Uhuru, can you rein in your ministers? Can you stop campaigning for BBI, drop BBI in Central? What's happening, City?
If you actually look at political processes purely from an academic perspective, you have to ask yourself, what is it that makes them vibrant? It's the pursuit of power. Now, you package that pursuit with a group of people who you believe are like-minded, and then you present an agenda which you believe that the voting populace will support. Now, in the times in which we live on this continent, the thing that actually comes to the fore when you're talking about our politics is the power and the presence of a youthful population, which in economic terms we call it a growing population, meaning there are more young people than there are older people. Now, because of this, it is assumed that their participation in the political process will and should bring about change. And in many cases it isn't a new agenda, but it is taking center stage in very, very many discussions. And primarily because more and over time, this population has been more educated and they've been more demanding, and they have put forward their interests and are pushing for reforms in a way that previously they actually have not pushed. But if you look at the history of this country, you'll realize that this youth agenda even began at independence. Many people who clamored for independence were not necessarily old. There were people who at that particular point in time were fairly youthful. But we have this unique situation which essentially reads as a power-sharing agreement with a handshake. It isn't new to this country. It isn't the first time we've had it. But this one is new in that there seems to be within this handshake a disparity. And the disparity arises from within the ruling party of the nation, where you have the principal and the deputy appearing to be at odds. One propagating and promoting an agenda which appears to be an agenda that is usually set aside for the opposition, and with a narrative that is slowly but very assuredly gaining momentum because people seem to resonate with it. And they would, because it's an agenda that seems to seek to empower the youth. Now, when you see this, there are those who could argue that this forward movement in itself is causing shivers within the political establishment. Anything of this nature tends to. But there's one little thing that hasn't actually come out to the fore. An outward and an outright and an equal opposition to it, meaning following the same agenda, because if you look at the whole movement, it's like an all-out campaign. It is not dissimilar to campaigns that you have during the campaign periods when people are seeking elective positions. But the thing that is perhaps the most concern in this particular point is how this agenda is to be interpreted and how it is being interpreted. An incident took place in Nakuru not too long ago, and it ended up with a vehicle being burnt. And that was because an incident that occurred was apparently there was an accident which involved a motorcycle rider. Motorcycle riders, by their very nature, tend to be youthful people. Now, the question you would ask is it the criminal element within this fraternity, or is it that the narrative that has been set by this youth agenda called the dynasty versus the others, the rich versus the poor, because this is what the agenda, which has apparently taken center stage in our politics. Is it a group of people who were interpreting this agenda to mean this, and by so doing, targeting people who they consider to be, should we say, economically better off than they are? Or is it just a lone incident that took place? Whichever the case, what we call the handshake and the attendant consequences that have followed thereafter have brought this particular nation to a situation where we could argue that our political situation is slowly but very assuredly gaining the prominence of being turbulent.
So, Siti, you've taken this from the handshake being turbulent and graduated it to say that the entire political atmosphere in the country is turbulent. So then the small things that we see, from parties being in a rustle about, individuals from one to the other, saying that the entire political system is shaking and that you need a situation whereby the pilot is going to, number one, reassure his crew and also reassure the passengers that he or she is carrying that everything is going to be all right and that they should be in a position of calm because he or she is at the helm of control. Because that's what happens during turbulence, right? Unless things get so out of control that then you're not able to guide this aircraft.
You see, if you are looking at the conversations that take place or that are taking place in the political realm in this country, the one narrative that seems to be propagated with more vigor than any other is what we like referring to as the hustler narrative. You hear of it more than anything else. Any other voice that is an alternate is a voice that seems to be opposing it or presenting an argument against it, but not presenting an argument that for its own sake stands on its own and says, this is our narrative. It's the narrative that opposes it. Now, what am I saying? This one incident points one. I'm talking about just one. You don't need 10 incidences to occur. If an interpretation of it or just the lone action of individuals who are criminal in nature takes place, but it's within that sphere of this particular narrative, it is cause for concern.
Okay, so I'm hearing a number of things that you're saying. One is the issue of the hustler narrative and the conversation that has been there in the social media in the last couple of days. The hustler narrative and whether the hustler narrative has gone off the rails, and now the incidences by border operators are basically turning this into a class narrative. Whether this now is becoming a have versus have-nots conversation, where the have-nots are starting now to take action against the haves, are those that they perceive to be the haves. Is that a new thing? Is that because those who are doing it are saying it's because I am a hustler and you're not? Or is it trying to pick something that has been happening all along and trying to pin it into another narrative to show the downside of this narrative? From where I see it, and I've looked at those conversations happening in the social media, especially quoting, border riders and what border riders have done. Border riders have, they gang up together whenever there's an accident, and the accident involves a border rider and a motor vehicle driver. And the border riders come in and they are strong against the motor vehicle driver to a point where there's violence, or even in the incidents you're talking about, they torture vehicle. Are they doing that because of the hustler narrative, or are they doing that? Is this just a habit that has been there, that has been gaining ground, that has not been controlled by law enforcement officers, and now you want to take that bad element and put it here as an excuse for hustler narrative? And I think it's the latter for me. When I see the border riders behaving, and this is across the country, you'll hear people talking to you from Mombasa going all the way to Turkana. When there's an accident involving motor vehicle and motorbike guys will come in droves, they'll gang up, and they'll be pushing against the driver. A former chief of defense forces, an entire general who took Kenya's troops to Somalia and conquered Kismayu, has even talked about it, experiencing it himself. Had an accident, border riders came and they almost wanted to lynch him and be violent until he made calls and people came. And those guys just realized, oh my goodness, we're dealing with the wrong one here. And they scattered. But you see, it's an incident that is replicated around the country. It has, in my opinion, has nothing to do with a hustler versus dynasty narrative. It has a lot to do with what has been happening in our society and the emergence of a lawless group of people. And those lawless group of people are in the public service transport sector, and they are basically not being reined in. Those two, to me, are unrelated.
Ideally, they wouldn't be. However, when criminal elements act within a certain atmosphere where a certain narrative has taken center stage, unfortunately, it is very easy to connect the two, even if no connection actually in reality exists. And why am I saying this? I'm saying this because, as you correctly put it, people in the boda industry have always had a rogue element attached to them. And not just rogue element, but it's been assumed that these people are more lawless than they are law-abiding. And that has to do with the way they behave, the way they conduct themselves. It is a sentiment that was even held with matatus, the drivers and those in the matatu industry.
Yes.
Essentially, you're talking about public industry, you're talking about matatus, you're talking about motorcycle riders. It's an attitude. But why I mentioned this particular incident, there have been threats. We even heard of them accosting people. You never heard of cars being burnt. Never.
Yes.
Never, ever. Now, when an incident of this nature takes place, there are many things that come to mind. Many, many things. Like you, I favor the argument that these are just criminal elements, because you cannot say that the entire industry of boda riders are criminals. You cannot say that or have a criminal intent. It is not true to say that. It's actually not true. There isn't even evidence to support that view. But the problem is when criminal behavior gets to the point where they think that they can actually take such action. I am waiting to see the response and how this is dealt with.
By law enforcement.
Yes, I'm waiting.
Yeah.
I'm waiting. Because it is the individuals who perpetrated this who should be weeded out and not the entire industry being demonized by it. But unfortunately, there isn't much that the industry has done to present themselves in a favorable light to the public.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. So, when an incident such as this one takes place and they tout and they bring out, or it is assumed that it is because they feel underprivileged, so this is the action against the people whom they consider are privileged, then unfortunately, tying it to the hustler narrative is not difficult. Because the hustler narrative, right from inception, has been the haves versus the have-nots. That is really the essence of the narrative.
I think what it does...
But it has been... The hustler narrative... Okay, go ahead, Ndu. I'll come.
No, I think because with this incident, we saw that, individuals were then, they brought in these whole chants and whatever of the dynasty, right? And saying that, do away with the dynasty. I think what has happened is that with the sentiments that come up from this hustler dynasty narrative is that it gives people an opportunity to express what they may have been thinking previously. Okay? We've seen examples of this happen even in the United States most recently. These individuals from, still have this Confederate thinking in mind, basically rode on a platform that Donald Trump had given them on a silver platter to come out and say and express and then act upon what it is that they were feeling. Had he not spoken in the way in which he did or invited them into the party, the argument is that probably you would not have seen this, or it may have taken longer for it to come out. Now, in this case, there is a criminal element involved, but you can't go away from the thinking that there are people who think that they're underprivileged because they've not been born with a silver spoon in their mouth. And then they're now using the opportunity that has been granted them because the story or the narrative is now pushed onto a national platform. And so they feel now they have an opportunity to express that. Unfortunately, what they do as a result of that is criminal. But the resentment is there, being expressed out in the open. And they've basically, again, them too, been invited to the party because somebody of such national acclaim is making that conversation now normal.
Right.
You
right.
See? So now they have
How
an
different
opportunity to
is it
express it
now when, you talk about people who have no opportunities for employment, people who are, underprivileged. How different is it now from what we have had in various political campaigns? Vijana wapate ajira za kazi. Nafasi za ajira. This is what happens whenever we get into a political campaign. That's when politicians know this Swahili
Suddenly
jargon.
remember. Yes.
Vijana wetu wapate nafasi za ajira. kina mama wetu wapate kujisimamia,
kujimudu,
all these things, kiuchumi. These are the words that come up. How different is this from that? And why then would we say that the hustler narrative has caught on because boda people are misbehaving? Those are not the only
Those
hustlers.
are excuses, I'm sorry.
The hustler narrative is about wheelbarrow. When did wheelbarrow become motorbike?
No.
Let's take a break anyway at 18 minutes after 9, and then we'll look at the weather and see, come back in and continue the conversation. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your
All right,
life.
what's going on in Nairobi this morning? We have mostly sunny conditions here and there at 19 degrees, warming up ever so slightly. We'll see lows of 15 today, going to highs of 27. Mostly sunny conditions in Nyeri at 19, highs of 26. 26 will also be the high in Nakuru, where it's mostly cloudy at 22. 25 will be the high in Eldoret, mostly cloudy at 22. Also at 22 is Kisumu, and mostly cloudy, highs of 27 today and lows of 19. 22 seems to be the magic number this morning because that's where Kakamega is, and mostly cloudy, highs of 29 and lows of 19. It's warmer, however, in Mombasa at 28 at the moment, going to highs of 35 today. 33 will be the high in Malindi, where it's mostly sunny as well at 28. Mostly cloudy conditions in Kampala this morning at 19, highs of 26 and lows of 18. We're looking at mostly sunny conditions in Dar es Salaam, where it's just as hot at 28, highs of 32 and lows of 26. Johannesburg is mostly cloudy at 17, highs of 25 and lows of 14. Lagos is clear this morning and sunny even at 25, highs of 32 and lows of 24. In Kinshasa, it's mostly cloudy at 23, highs of 33. Take a look then east into Beijing, where it's slightly warmer today, even at 5 degrees at the moment, that is. It'll go to highs of 14, and we're looking at minus 11 at the lowest. Mostly cloudy conditions in Paris at 2, highs of 8 and lows of 4. It's also 4 degrees in London and have exact same conditions as Paris, with 8 as the high and lows of 4. The lowest is going to be round about 0 and freezing in New York, where it's 5 right now. Go to highs of 7 through the day.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Everything nice.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Narrative taking on a new turn, taking off in a different tangent from where it started. So let's just remind ourselves where it started. Hustler dynasty narrative was this thing that was started by the deputy president and his supporters on who can occupy the top seat of the country, and him trying to segregate himself from his perceived competitors in the 2022 election. Clearly front-running Raila Odinga, Musalia Mudavadi, and the others, and saying, unlike them, I'm not the father of somebody who has occupied a seat in government. I'm not the son of somebody who has occupied a seat in government. Unlike them, I don't have that name that then can go back into many years in government. I'm different. And therefore, I represent the rest of you guys who have never occupied such a seat. Look at these people. Started that way. Going ahead into, inviting and having conversations with people and saying, looking at the wheelbarrow, the mkokotenis, the donating of sewing machines and donating of people who make desks and saying, I can buy the equipment that you're making. It's not just one group of people, of traders. It's across the social spectrum. Then we get to a point now where we're having conversations about border operators, and it's been going around the social media. Border operators, the incident in Nakuru, had an altercation with a motorist, and they torched a vehicle. And were chanting Choma Dynasty, reportedly. And others have happened around the country, where border operators, now if you had an accident down there, within a few minutes, other border riders who would be passing along will stop, they'll come in and they'll side with their colleague and their comrade, and they'll say, all right, whatever happens, we are here to talk about the right of this person. Some of them, if you ask them, they'll tell you this started because when we started operating borders, when the borders started operating and being on the road and increasingly being on the road, there'd be accidents and it'd be the other way around. How we are treated by these people. Ulikuwa unapita wapi? Ulikuwa hujui barabara? Wewe ulisomea wapi driving? The kind of response that they've been getting from motorists is what made them come together. And, whenever there's one, the other one would stop and say, no, man, don't talk to us like this. We are also human. So it raises that whole issue of, do they feel like they are looked down upon by the other road users? Is that what is now fueling this kind of anger? Or is the anger being fueled by class divide? If it was class divide, why aren't we seeing the others? Why aren't we seeing Mkokoteni really? People who also use roads?
Exactly. This is the thing. What people, Mkokoteni people, the cart pushers, people who have to
people in
scrounge for their living every day. That's what I'm saying. I don't think that it is a genuine argument to say that suddenly people have realized that the class is what divides them and then they're now pushing for their rights, because you would see it across board. I think that here what you have is continued bad behavior that now is being justified by something else that happens to be in the limelight at the moment. I think it's going to be used. I think it is not the first, it is not the last time that you're going to hear this narrative then being applied to certain positions or certain circumstances or experience. It's going to be used. Unfortunately, this is what happens when you take an idea and you plant it in the minds of people who think that there is a divide on something that has been there for yonks. It has been there. There has always been a class divide. Unfortunately, what has happened now is that this narrative has been taken and it has then again been reintroduced into the minds of people for a political goal. Unfortunately. And to say that, you know what, guess what? You guys are divided by class. Here's an opportunity for you to take your decision to the ballot, right? And we will give you an opportunity to remove that class divide. But is it true, really? And so guess what? You will now use that reasoning or that explanation for any situation in which you find yourself in, where the truth of the matter is that bad manners have been used on the road, whereby somebody drives in a certain way, and then you're going to come and say, oh, you know what? It is because there is a divide between dynasty and hustler. Are you kidding me?
Which
let's
really
talk about
is the
something
overriding
else.
narrative here. Is it the cultural acceptance of impunity, which we've had for the longest time, being cascaded down? Because by the time people decide to burn someone's car,
and let me tell you something. If you would take the crowd of people, that mob of people there who decide to go and burn the car, if you were to pick that crowd one by one and sat with each individual and asked them if you really felt that their person was wrong, you would find that many of them would tell you yes, their person was wrong. But the mob mentality is to go with the order of the day. So that's what I'm telling you. Yes, I do feel that it is bad manners trickling down.
That's exactly
it. Is immunity. It's impunity trickling down, because people will then do what they want to do or do it because everybody else is doing it. But if they were sat down and asked, really, do you believe this thing? The answer would be no. The answer would be no.
The onus is on the law enforcement officers law enforcement agencies to do their job. When you talk about that mob mentality, remember there was a time in this country where mob justice for suspected thieves was the norm.
It was instant.
No, the norm. Somebody is, you just shout and say that person has pickpocket. That's it.
You know you're dead.
That's it. The next thing, you have a tie around your neck. There is petrol that has come in or kerosene.
Where do they find those tires?
Chap, and you are dead. That happened for a while. Law enforcement said, no. You cannot take law in your own hands, and it stopped. The same thing that we are seeing now with the borders happened progressively with the matatu industry, getting to a point where people would actually be dropped. So you've taken a matatu, let's say you're moving from here to Thika, and halfway through the journey, the matatu crew decide that the fare was not 50 bob. We didn't say 50, we meant 80. And you're like, I don't have 80, shuka. And you're dumped halfway through your journey. And this was there until Michuki came and reigned in this sector and said, absolutely no way. This is how things are going to be done. There's a law in place. We are going to follow the law. And by, the matatu industry was sort of brought to some conformity. They still misbehave, but not to the level and degree that they were misbehaving then. Where matatus actually find that there is traffic on Mombasa Road and decide to move over to the other side, oncoming traffic, and it becomes
or just stop anywhere.
They move on. Toka kwa barabara, I am the matatu. This is the same kind of culture that we are seeing with this. Now, unfortunately, those who are with or against the hustler narrative will try and use this in one way or the other. Those for the hustler narrative will be captured in this bracket because if you see the meeting, for example, that was happening in Bomet or wherever a couple of days ago was a border riders meeting, trying to, work with the border riders, trying to empower them. You see? So when those people move out of that meeting and they go and misbehave, somebody can easily say, you see, they've just come from that meeting of the hustlers and they're misbehaving this way because of what they've been told in that meeting. They have been empowered according to the meeting. They were given power to go and do what they wish. Not being able to divide, even for the politicians to say, we are talking about empowerment, but empowerment within the rule of law, that is where our problem is. Is there a divide between the haves and have-nots? That has always been there.
It's been there.
That has always been there. And it's important to raise that conversation of why do we have this widening gap? That's what brings in governments into power and removes governments from power.
But Eric asked the question. So what is this thing that constitutes the haves? Because the have-nots, that is not difficult to understand. All right? What is it?
Who is a have?
Who's a have? Huh? Who is a have?
How much?
Yes. If I own a bicycle, am I a have?
Yes.
If I own a motorbike, am I a have? If I own a tuk-tuk, if I own a car, then I am not just a have, I am a have a lot, isn't it?
You're a
You have a have more.
Yes. If I live in a certain part of town, then the much which makes me a have is also increased, isn't it? Now, there's a problem here, and I think the incidents that we talk about in Nakuru, where the car was torched, brings to the fore something very, very fundamental. And we've mentioned it, and I want to mention it again. See, the power of example in our politics, which is always being downplayed, not just the politicking, but what it entails. Unfortunately, impunity has always taken center stage in the things that we do in this country.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the narrative, and I'm calling it an empowerment narrative, of the hustler narrative. It is an empowerment narrative. But do you know what also gets picked up with it? The impunity that is represented by the political class. And impunity in our case means the law now becomes an issue. People seek to do exactly what it is that they think they need to do. Remember, when you talk about a youthful agenda, we must recall that this government, when it came in, was youthful. This was not a government of some old fogies. It was a youthful...
It wasn't analog.
No, there's nothing analog about it. It was a youthful government. Very, very youthful indeed. A little audit.
And then?
On what they've been able to achieve.
Yes.
For the youth especially.
For the youth. A little audit from day one. And what you'll find is a string of broken promises.
Right.
Or unachieved. A string. It is not nitpicking, it's just a fact. Things which were told would be done. And you know what is interesting about these promises? The individual who was heard making many of these promises also happens to be our deputy president. And many of those promises to date remain unfulfilled. And we have a year and a bit to the next election. So anyone who is a purveyor of the truth or anyone who has eyes to see will observe and note that these promises will not be kept by the time we get to 2022. Now, the same argument that I've heard people being used against Museveni is, if you have not done these things in the X number of years, let's put it more precisely, decades that you've been in power, how is it that you're going to actually do it now?
What's the assurance that you're going to do it now?
Yes. Actually, it's an interesting argument, but it isn't a complete argument in my opinion in this sense.
There's context into it.
Yes.
Let's come back and look at that context. 9:30. Time for us to take a break and see what's happening on the roads this morning. We'll be back shortly, and we want to hear from you as well. 0719-012-600.
Thank you.
The political class, the contestants, everybody is trying to outsteal the other.
Remorse is not taught in any school. Manners is something you get from your mother. You don't get it from your political party.
Why are we so unfocused as a country? Why are we spending money and resources
Yet, we have real challenges in this country.
This coronavirus pandemic should teach us one thing, that universal healthcare is critical. Because at this point, whether you have a medical card that covers you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Traffic.
The situation on Kiambu Road today is actually quite terrible. Looking at several lanes of traffic in and outbound. And then, of course, yes, we have overlappers, so nobody really cares about anything. And we're trying to connect with Thika Road this morning, so it is crazy. And that's what's going on Kiambu Road this morning. Thika Road then out towards Pangani is looking a little bit better, but it's not as clear as we would like it to be. Okay, where else are we looking at issues? Outer Ring Road, jam-packed all the way from Allsops to Taj Mall today. Then trying to connect with Mombasa Road and try to find a way out there through North Airport Road. That ain't happening. It's looking quite packed as well. Okay, so then Uhuru Highway also into the CBD. And then out towards Westlands is also moving very slowly, as is Mombasa Road outbound. So still some traffic. Traffic hour seems to be extended to 10 o'clock in January. We'll keep looking at it, guys. Let us know also what you see. Spice FM KE on Twitter. Text on 40127.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Minutes to 10. So, CT, you're calling it the empowerment narrative.
It is an empowerment narrative because anyone who tells you that you can lift yourself up from the position you are in to where you are, that's where, remember that narrative of the chicken and the egg and the selling of the chicken and the egg and all that? Yeah. We've had a story of the charcoal and the trees before, how people do it. We've even had situations of the egg coming in from, it explains the rags to riches story.
Chicken.
Yes. Those are actually empowerment narratives.
Yeah.
Meaning, if you do this, you can actually move and become.
Possible.
It's possible. If it is possible with me, it is also possible with you. Now, you tell me, if the route that you followed is not difficult to choreograph, really, is it a narrative of work, process, develop, or is it a narrative of everybody should get into politics?
But also, at the same time, is this narrative, this empowerment narrative, does it run the risk of polarizing the country? I think that's where the main, this whole concern about it is, the polarization.
We already polarize.
Does it run the risk of polarizing the country?
More.
That,
okay.
Yes.
Maybe that's the question that we should be asking. Is the Hustler dynasty narrative, does the Hustler dynasty narrative run the risk of polarizing the country more?
You know why I use the word turbulence is because if you look at the reaction of the Hustler narrative, it is turbulent because it seems to be resonating in a way that has many political players worried. Because when you have people listening to it, people who you didn't think would listen, then essentially from a political perspective, it means that there is a chance that your political base may be eroded. If it's something that is resonating with young people in one part of the country, the likelihood that it will resonate with other young people in other parts of the country is real. It is a reality. But that it will polarize. Today's Monday, isn't it?
Yes.
All right, not Friday.
Yeah.
It's Friday carried on to Monday. The reality that it will polarize the country, yes, it could. But whenever we talk of polarizing, we make it sound as though it's negative. It's not necessarily negative. When something comes to the fore, something that has always been there, and it forces you to think and talk about it at great length, it is not a bad thing. Because you then ask yourself, what is it that has led us to this position? What is it that has brought about this? The resonation of this narrative has been brought about by many events over many years that has clearly shown that certain people in this country, especially the youth, have not been given a fair shake. So if someone appears to understand them by appearing to present himself as somebody who is willing to give them a fair shake, of course they will listen, because where are the other alternatives that they could listen to other than this one?
CT, if it was true Do you see what I'm saying?
If all was true.
If this thing that you're coming to tell people who've not been given a fair shake, that you resonate with them, that you understand, it's great to understand. But then you must go, like you say, it must be completed. It must be completed, especially because you're in a position to having had done something about it. So what is it that you have done about this position, whether you're bringing to people, that could change it? Because it cannot be that it is the thing that would essentially polarize people. And if your true intention is to make sure that people come together and that everybody has a fair chance at getting ahead in this development story, then you should actually be doing something about it. You've said yourself, the same person who's bringing about this narrative had an opportunity to change things in this country as far as the development agenda is concerned, and has done nothing about it in the last 6 or 7 years.
I wouldn't say nothing. I wouldn't say nothing.
Okay, if you want to take one example, and I say, okay, stadia whereby sports people, young people who feel a particular agenda, and we've known, for example, that things like sport could actually bring out bring out change in somebody's life. Stadia like that, for example, in different parts of the country, that could then be brought about. Something like that could have been completed. If you made a promise, I would assume that there would have been something upon which you're making this promise that you knew that it could have been completed. Wasn't completed. I am saying that if you're going to base your considerations on a situation that you see and say, we want to change this, let the change be seen in the lives of those people that you are saying are going to form your army of followers. Come on.
Now, you want to shoot the messenger because of the message. You're saying because the messenger is the inappropriate person, then the message is therefore illegitimate.
No, I didn't say that. I'm saying that if you're bringing about a particular message, I'm hoping that if you're saying that things are not good as you see them, right? And you're in a position whereby you can influence change.
Yep.
It would be great to see the change by some of the things that you do or have done.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
What you're saying makes perfect sense, but why don't we then put it against the backdrop of the reality of our country and the reality of the perception that people have in life? Do most Kenyans think and believe that what we call political thuggery, or what I like calling political thievery, is necessarily wrong? Our moral compass, as we talk about it, is it uniform that what we consider to be wrong is universally considered
I think the
by
moral
a country?
compass lost its needles a while ago.
Yes. The point I'm trying to make here is this. You are talking about the moral examples that people set and what it is we think is appropriate. You've heard of the story of Robin Hood. Okay. What was he?
A thief.
He was a hot thief.
Yes. The fundamental difference was that he presented himself as somebody who stole from the rich and then gave to the poor. But he was a thief. Okay?
Yeah.
Circumstances notwithstanding, the explanation notwithstanding. Now, if you have a country where the reality is we have many young people who are educated, trained, but do not know what to do with their training because there are no opportunities, and this has not been presented. Do you think that if they are presented with someone who is trying to present a semblance of hope, even if it is the same person whose actions have guaranteed that this helplessness is part and parcel of our lives, what do you think they're going to listen to? Because where is the alternative narrative that they're going to listen to, which is more hopeful? You will forget the purvey of the message and listen to the message. Or you'll forget about what you may think are the misdeeds, but you look at, and then these things we're calling misdeeds, do you think they perceive them as misdeeds? And I'm saying they don't.
Because they've been conditioned to do so.
They've been
conditioned to think that way. If there was that conditioning that did not take active place, people would not be. I mean, can you imagine that it's become so bad that we can explain away bad behavior? To say that because, you know what, this is how people have been conditioned to think over time, and that's why they're actually thinking that a bad thing actually looks good.
Actually,
it shouldn't be that way.
No. It's not explaining it away. It's accepting the fact. From then you begin a different conversation of how we got there and what needs to be done. But if you don't accept that reality, you will be actually basing even your thinking on a wrong premise.
No, I think you already passed the acceptance of the reality is there. It's been accepted that this is the way things have been. But I'm saying that to remain in that acceptance is the problem. To remain at that point where we say, oh, you know what, people steal, that's how we're going to get along. People come and make promises and they don't fulfill them. This is what we expect. To remain in that abyss, that's the problem.
Well, then we have a big problem, don't we?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. And in order to get out of it, you can't continue living on these promises whereby you get a crumb and you could get the whole loaf.
People have got to change, and then they look for a vehicle with which to change and a reason to explain why things have been the way they have been. And I see that's what this hustler versus dynasty narrative has been. You know, the hustler versus dynasty, once again, it's not about people who have money and those that don't have money. It is about politics and who has occupied the top leadership of politics in the country. That is it.
And who's going to continue
It
getting
is
the opportunities to fill
it's
those spots?
about whether, if you look at the names that have occupied the political leadership in the country, they are around the same...
Recycling over and over the same.
Recycling the same people. And William Ruto then positioning himself and saying, I'm an outsider. And that's why I was crying all over when I became the deputy president, because it was something that was completely, an oddity. That I, an outsider, has now come here. And now he's basically been trying to say, no. You see, I went in there, but they're trying to kick me out. They're trying to say I cannot occupy the chairman's seat because I don't have the kind of name. That the people that he's been talking to have been getting the message. That's why you see, during the burial of Mrs. Hannah Mudavadi, the people who were speaking about it, Raila and Uhuru and the other, they understood the message. That you say you call us dynasty, we are not dynasty. This morning, when the president was having this conversation on vernacular Kameme and the other Kikuyu stations, he said, if someone wants to use the logic that because my father was a president and now I am president, then our family is a dynasty, does that mean that if your father was a doctor, that you should not be one? It's like saying, so are you saying that because my father was a president, I cannot be a politician and vie for president? He understands the message. He understands the message. The hustler versus dynasty is talking about politics and the political families. It's not about the haves and have-nots. That's why he's not going back to say, but the person who's saying is very rich.
It's not about the money.
This conversation is not about haves and have-nots. It's now confused with the haves and have-nots conversation, and this is where maybe Ruto's political campaign has a role to play.
You understand the majority of the people who are getting this message, right? Who, by the way, it's intended for, are thinking that way, and that's the problem.
Who's the majority? How do we know the majority are thinking that way?
No, but listen to what people are saying.
Ask yourself a simple question.
Look at those ones who are burning.
The populations that actually even attend rallies.
Who are they talking
Not just
to?
any individual's rallies.
No.
Any rally in this country.
Yeah.
It's young people.
It's young people.
That's true.
Who unfortunately are disadvantaged.
That's true.
Who don't have the power of the purse. Right
That's
at that
true.
point.
That doesn't mean that they have understood the message the way you're saying.
But what are they going to do when you hear the chants? Just as an example. Of course, we can't.
That is not a majority.
Hold on. Of course, because we can't say that any kind of research has been done and you say because this is happening in different parts of the country. But giving us an example, what do we hear the chant? Dynasty out.
Yes.
What do those people, border riders who feel that, okay, they don't have enough? That message is trickling down to them and saying, you know what? This country is split because we have money, they don't have money.
I agree. There are some people who are understanding that message that way. But there are others who get the message the way it is. Now, we do not know who the majority is, but we know that those that are targeted on the dynasty side understand that they're the ones who are being targeted. Let's take a break and then come back and pick your calls. 0719 012 600. Good morning.
Sugar and spice and everything nice, just the way you like it.
The Spice Drive.
Did you have a great day? I hope you did. I intend to make it better from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. I'm going to be taking you home nice and chill. Everyone is welcome aboard. The hashtag is Spice Drive and, of course, Spice FMKE on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
The Spice Drive with Monique. The official soundtrack of getting you where you need to be. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
All right, so 13 minutes to 10. Let's hear from Brian, who is in Nakuru. Good morning, Brian.
Morning, guys.
Morning.
Thank you. A lovely morning. And the show has been well. So I'd just like to talk about the dynasty thing and the hustler. One thing, as the president has said, if your dad was a doctor, you can't choose to be another. That means the kid cannot be a doctor. It's up to the kid to choose. And the second thing is nobody sends an application letter to choose where he's born. So if I was born there, you can't judge me for being born there because if let's take if Ruto was born in Uru's family, what will happen now? What will he be saying right now? So this is not something you can send an application letter to somewhere. If your family worked hard, that's your family thing, and they should separate family from a person himself. And again, the dynasty thing and this hustler thing, this I'm telling you, we are about to cloud chase. We are cloud chasing right now because, as you can see, the hustler narrative, being honest to you, it's a pure what shall we call it? It's a fallacy. Because the people who are calling themselves hustler, one, they are establishing their own dynasties with their own kids. They want to build their own dynasty with their own kids. So the guy is just building his dynasty. The guy is going around with having all the money while you are just here sleeping hungry, sleeping in a single room, and you are struggling to survive shouting hustler, hustler. While him is there having all that he did. And once they went into power, we had from...
Brian, let me ask you a question. Do you really think that in reality, people will not judge you based on the family that you are born in?
You know, we usually say the sins of the father shall be carried to the next generation. That's written in the good book, but usually everybody carries his own sin. Everybody carries his own cross. Jesus says that. So don't judge me because of the sins of my father.
Even if we move away from the political realm, think about a rural area.
Yeah.
Do you think, let's just talk about the reputation, family reputation as we call them, okay?
Yeah.
If I come from a family of known night runners or witch doctors, will it not affect me?
It will affect you. Okay. It will. But it's up to you to decide. Will you be a night runner like the rest of your family? Yeah, but...
And even if you don't run at night, do you think people will believe you don't run at night?
It doesn't matter. Thank you, Brian. Thank you very much. Sami in Magarini, good morning.
Good morning, guys.
How are you today, Sami?
I'm fine, Sam.
Okay.
Yes, I would like, first of all, to give you a research to do for me. Actually, referring to the first conversation when you had with those two gentlemen, lawyers. Actually, you forgot to ask them what happens to the gazetted notice of IBC. And then the other is also about what happens if the vacant seat, as you asked them, the vacant seat of Governor Socio of Nairobi. What happens if Congo is restored? And what happens to the new sworn-in governor? So those are the two questions actually I would like you to ask them before they disappeared. Now, coming to the dynasty and the hustler nation, I think this has come because of the three families, the Moi, the Kenyattas, and the Ogingas. But actually, I'm not actually victimizing the Oginga and all that. But I think the way they have shown that they want to rotate, the rain comes from the Moi, goes to Kenyattas, goes to Raila. So this narrative has just come because of the perspective that people think maybe these guys want to stick in power or want to rule as a monarchy. So I think that dynasty and hustler has come about. But the real sense, we have been given some definition about the hustler, what is an hustler. And some of the people say hustler is someone whose parents have nothing. Some say dynasty is someone whose parents actually had a... But I don't think these are those. Hustler is someone who goes every day to look for daily bread. I don't think it has not anything to do with hustler or to do with dynasty. So people have to decide who to elect. People have to decide who is the best, who has the best management and whatever.
Thank you, Sami. Samuel in Meru, good morning.
Yes, good morning, Spice FM.
Good morning.
Yeah, my contribution to the hustler dynasty discussion would be that I want to refer to what Nyong'o said during Mudavadi's mother's funeral. He said that we are giving simplistic, answers to very difficult, problems.
Right.
I think every election has a mantra. In 2013, the mantra was analog versus digital. In 2017, these guys were saying that, we want to proceed, to progress with what we were doing in the previous term. But I think these mantras are just red herrings. Our politics is largely tribal. As much as the DP Ruto is propagating the hustler mantra, at the end, beneath the facade, there is a lot of tribal arithmetic which he is trying to craft. So largely, all these political players, they want to, brainwash Kenyans that they are standing for certain ideologies. But largely, our politics is still tribal. We will still get into tribal politics in 2022, and it will inform, the tyranny of numbers and what have you. So I think that one we need to desist from that, hustler versus dynasty thing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mila in Siaya. Good morning, Mila.
Hey, good morning. How was your weekend, lady and gentlemen?
Good, thank
you. It was very good.
It was good.
Now, I want to appreciate the president. Now he has gone into politics because the deputy has been politicking, and now it is now real politics. I am happy that he went to the local radio station and he gave his views. Two, the hustler narrative. You know, if you live in a village in Kenya, so and so is now doing well, and you know his dad and you know his parents, and you know very well that this guy worked hard. And majority of Kenyans who are now rich, they came from a very, very humble background. So generally speaking, people know, and I would like people who are pushing this, because it is true that majority of Kenyans are not living or have not, and it is because of the politics that we've been playing. So it is a reality that is a time bomb that the youth are not doing well, and they are getting agitated. You can look at what is happening with the mental state of Kenya. But what is so unfortunate is that people who are pushing the hustler narrative are the ones who did not implement the 844 the way, because when the 844 started, there were things that were brought in, things that are saying, those wheelbarrows that they are talking now, we used to have Macharani, Komashule, we used to home science, we used to use this. Then they came up with a very nice thing, the CBC, which is just the 844 that we had. And you can imagine, with over 4,500 schools in the country at grassroots level, if we can bring these things to schools and then we train young people to use these things, and that is the difference between the people who are propagating the hustler narrative and the handshake team, because the handshake team are saying, let us use the system, let us take these things that you are talking about, let us use the formal system, let us empower our youth. And these other people are busy going into rallies, inciting people, and then you see the difference. And Kenyans are intelligent.
Thank you, Mila.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you very much. Well, he says the difference between those two is how each of them is selling out their message. I personally don't see a difference, but okay. It's okay. The whole hustler versus dynasty narrative and the effect that it could have. I think, for me, I see the danger in it spiraling out of control, spiraling out of main conversation and communication. If your communication was, I'd like to become president, despite the fact that I do not come from any of these major families, then that is different from, I'd like to become president so that I can empower you, so that we can all fight these other guys. Because the us versus them conversation is not different from the 42 versus 1. Is not different from what we have seen in other parts, in other campaigns. In 2007, in the run-up to that violence, this was the kind of conversation. It was these people who came to occupy our land. These people who came to occupy, they are the ones who now live in urban centers. We have been relegated to the rural parts of this country of ours.
And you know how it graduated? These people who took our land.
These people who took our land.
It just moved on.
It just, it may have started in a very innocent way, but then it took a different twist and it led to violence. Same kind of thing here. If those who sat down and crafted this narrative and the campaign and communication for Hustler versus Dynasty, if they indeed do not intend for it to become a violent thing, then they need to relook it.
And respeak it.
And be very clear on what they mean. Otherwise, it's a very dangerous conversation. And it doesn't matter what that side and the opposite side are trying to say, they are also propagating the same.
Because whether it was intended or not, because it would be very scary to think that you said something like this and you created such a narrative without taking into consideration the kind of effect it would have on the minds of people who unfortunately are in the masses and have the power to be able to spread this same narrative amongst people. And it's a game like of Chinese telephone, that you say one thing, by the time it gets to other people and their minds and their understanding, it has taken a totally different tangent.
Altogether.
You start off by trying to say that you are in a position to lead people because of the nature of your circumstances. How that translates in the minds of other people is totally different. They will use that excuse for any kind of action they take in the future.
I wonder whether this has any connection to today's proverb.
Well, you can always find a connection if you want to. But here, every time I give an explanation, I will always turn to the politicians. It is useless trying to convince a politician that the pursuit of power as they are pursuing it is probably not the best way that they should present their case to the citizenry. It is useless because at the end of the day, they will choose power for its own sake and everything else will not
be damned.
Yes.
See you again tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Another episode of The Situation Room. Have a lovely